Johnson makes the cut. Forget about that. Johnson, first down, slides down, and the Washington Huskies are going to win the final Pac-12 championship and punch a ticket to the college football playoff.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Yeah, 7 catches, 157 yards. That was supposed to be a reverse pitch, and it blows up, and Salter makes a positive play and breaks loose, and he scores 35 yards. Wow.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
3rd and 9. Four-man rush against Plummer to the end zone this time, and it's intercepted by Bethune. He made a great play earlier and comes up with the pick in the end zone. The Florida State defense does it again.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
3-5 defense. Here's some trickery. It's a flea flicker, and it works to perfection. Jatavion Sanders wide open for the touchdown.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Ponies 5 of 8 on 3rd down. Here comes the heat. Jennings off the back foot. Slings it into the end zone. And caught for the touchdown. Keyshawn Smith.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Milroe again, a wide snap. He's got a wheel rack to Jam Miller. Touchdown, Alabama.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
You know, we always, there are days in which there is so much to get to. Today might be as jam-packed with information, including major topics, discussion. We have our guest lineup and more. The opening of the transfer portal, the college football playoff arguments or enjoyment. There are players who are not going to play in bowl games. Today, Baylor introduced their offensive coordinator, Jake Spavital. We'll discuss more of that and hear from him around 4. It is, my God, where do you start, including when one of your co-hosts has been intoxicated since Saturday afternoon, evening, watching Florida State, and then the weekend itself. Now, we're going to let you have your time. But if it's okay with you, we're going to open up with the transfer portal.
Okay. That'll give me some time to stew on this. I did have an hour where I got to scream into the void, so hopefully it's a little bit more rational now.
That was a tease. That was getting you warmed up like a singer for the national anthem. And we're going to let Paul let loose, along with what we have to say, too. Craig Smoak, David Smoak, and also Paul Catalina. Emery, Jack's out today, but always around. And then, of course, Garrett Ross here as well. Let's start with this comment from, this was earlier today that is not even a complete list yet. Russ Dellinger. Here are the quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Kyle McCord, Dylan Gabriel. We knew about Cam Ward. We knew about Moore, Leonard, McCall, Van Dyke, Howard, Will Rogers, DJ. Also, Blake Shapen remains in the transfer portal. We'll have more on that a little bit after 4. There are names that are not included in that list. It is mass transfer portal. Floodgates are open.
Kyle McCord was kind of a shocking one to me, which leads me to believe, nobody on the list is a surprise except for Kyle McCord because they don't have a ready-made replacement, on the route. Dylan Gabriel replaced by Jackson Arnold. Cam Ward, it's not shocking given the money going to him. Dante Moore, we kind of went through that. All the other ones. But Kyle McCord surprised me a little bit because Ohio State doesn't have anybody. Yeah, they got Devin Brown, but he beat Devin Brown out this year. It was surprising because he did get better all year long, which leads me to believe that Ohio State's let him believe that there's a transfer coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Craig, obviously, So much to get to. Dylan Gabriel has a year left because he's a graduate transfer, plus a year left. Your thoughts about that list? Because usually the transfer portal is about the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, that's somewhat surprising. I mean, Dylan had another year left, so, I mean, I understand when the rumors got started about Jeff Lebby and, him going to Mississippi State, there was the shot that, oh, well, maybe Dylan Gabriel could join him. I didn't really buy into those, but – I suppose after weighing his options and as close as he is with Lebby and the opportunities that beyond Mississippi State, I'm sure are out there for a quarterback of his caliber, that was probably awfully enticing, and therefore he decides to enter his name into the transfer portal. I think at this point in time, especially having moved on from Lebby, Oklahoma is wanting something a little bit different, namely Jackson Arnold. So, if you're Dylan Gabriel and you feel like there's still a great opportunity at the college level, then you're going to look around, and so I understand that, but still was sort of surprised by that. I just felt like at this stage, like you've kind of done all you can do, like move on and go try your trade in the pros. But okay, we'll see what happens there. It's weird though because he's not even going to be considered a Sooner whenever he goes to the NFL at this point, which is so weird when you end your career somewhere else. You're way distance from being a UCF guy at this point. So don't know that I love 3 colleges for a quarterback in a career. I don't think that that's the coolest thing in the world. No. But then again, a lot of what's going on right now is not very cool. So, that was surprising. McCord, that was surprising. Cam Ward was not. Riley Leonard was not. A lot of these others were not. That's a good list, but it's also not quite living up to the expectations that I thought of when people were teasing this. Now, granted, they were drumming up interest for their articles and all the stories that were going to break early this week, but the way it was being teased, like just wait until the portal opens, I don't feel like it's lived up to that. I don't know about you guys. I feel like Dylan Gabriel's a shockwave of sorts. Kyle
Especially
McCord
if he ends up at USC with Lincoln Riley, would that not just be like typical? But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a really wild story, and I don't know. That'd be kind of a slap in the face to Oklahoma fans after the last couple of years. But, I mean, that's certainly a possibility as well, and would be really interesting if that's what happens. But, I mean, that's a good list. It's a solid group of quarterbacks. I don't know. My expectations, I think, got a little bit too high because of just sort of the teasing at the end of last week. So that portal opened last night, and I'm like, all right, let the inmates start to run the asylum, and it was like a slow drip, and then today we got a bit more, but nothing that I think is like super earth-shattering. I think Gabriel's a surprise, and McCord's a surprise, like I said, but beyond that, that's kind of the list that you were expecting going in.
Chapin, Shuck, of course, Texas Tech, a lot of teams looking at him. I saw a note about maybe Louisville, among others. All right, so, and then Walter Nolan leaving A&M into the transfer portal, a big boy name.
That one, I thought of all the players, Evan Stern, they may still have guys leave, and they haven't really, outside of Walter Nolan and another wide receiver, and Max Johnson, they haven't had an exodus, because I think that's part of the reason they brought Mike Elko back, because he had familiarity with the roster, and that people liked him and he could keep them around. But I guess Walter Nolan's big thing was Elijah Robinson leaving, because that's his position coach. He's on his way to Syracuse to be the defensive coordinator to Fran Brown. Jeff Nixon going to be the offensive coordinator while we're talking about that. So the band's getting back together a little bit there that was here in Waco together. But Walter Nolan did surprise me, because Mike Elko, being a defensive head coach, you would think could kind of help Walter's ascendancy to the NFL. But he's made big money at A&M. He's going to make big money wherever else he goes.
All right, so that's part of what today is. I saw a note from Max Olson. There was 350. That was like 2 hours ago.
500 now.
Now 500 already in the transfer portal. So all of that. And again, we'll discuss Baylor, those coming back, those moving on at 4 o'clock with some audio from offensive coordinator Jake Spavital, who was introduced today at around 11:30. But college football, the college football standings released. And everybody has their own way of trying to, I guess, tell a story. Everybody could try to why Alabama is in, or why Texas is in, or, of course, Michigan, Washington unbeaten, and they're in. But so was Florida State. I had a bad feeling about this, and, Paul, I kind of sent a text to you about it when we had our group text late Saturday into Sunday. So they're done. They're out. And you can read all the reasons. I'll give you the floor, and we don't need you to, lose your job here, but go ahead.
Well, the reason given by Boo Corrigan was that Florida State is a different team without Jordan Travis. So if I'm to believe that that's the real reason, The only reason that they had to keep Florida State out was the availability of one player. Because it's not about Brock Glenn, because Brock Glenn wouldn't play in the playoff game. And if the playoff game was next week and not a month from now, I could almost buy that justification as well, seeing as Tate Rodemaker didn't break his leg as well. He's in the concussion protocol and almost made it out to play the game this week, but just couldn't get in under the wire and wasn't ready. They won all their games. So if the only reason is Jordan Travis, then that's really not a reason, because you can dive into, yes, I know the quarterback's the most important position, but Georgia might be not in this thing at all because Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey were banged up and not at full speed for Alabama. So Carson Beck was healthy, but not everybody around him was. So that's why you play games on the field, and this reeks of me to they got down to the point where they had two Final Fours, one of them with Alabama in it and one of them with Florida State in it. And the question came, are we really going to leave the SEC out? And because Greg Sankey has done an excellent job of marketing his conference and throwing out these talking points, and it started from the minute that Jordan Travis laid there on the field with a broken leg. That's if you watching the game, watching any game, that was the buzz. Well, does Florida State, does this affect the College Football Playoff Committee, even if they go undefeated? Bill Hancock last week said, it's not about the four most deserving. It's been the four best. It's never been the four most deserving, even though that's a lie, because last year TCU was in. They were one of the four most deserving and won a game. Cincinnati got in. They were one of the four most deserving, but were they one of the four best? No, but they got in. There's lots of those teams like that. And this was, we're afraid of Greg Sankey and we are afraid of the SEC backlash. So this is what we're going to do. We can't keep the SEC out of this because they're grading this on history. And while the SEC is a great history in the playoff in any given year is not about what you did the year before or 10 years ago or 4 years ago or whatever. It's about now. And in this situation now, Alabama certainly has a playoff caliber resume, and they've got good wins, including one over the number one team in the country. But in the end, they lost to one of the other teams that was up for this with the same record as them. And this exact scenario should have been the bingo of the SEC's out. Sorry, well, this changes next year. But instead, Boo Corrigan can get there my heart goes out to Florida State. Well, I don't think anybody's heart would have had to go out to Alabama. Why did you make this decision? Because if it's about what's on the field and if games matter and if the regular season is the most important, and that's why they didn't expand the playoff forever, you just spit on that too.
All right, Paul, Craig, your thoughts about it. And I want to get to the Ohio State example that too many people are using about what they did with Cardell Jones in the Big Ten championship game. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, I think, like a lot of people do, and I think that more than one thing can be true at once. I think that you can say the committee got it right with the four best teams, but I also think you can believe that their decision was gutless. And the reason why it was gutless was because I saw somebody, the real tough decision was to put the team that wasn't undefeated in there. No, the easy decision was to put Alabama and the SEC in the playoff. That was the easy decision. And it was especially an easy decision given this is the last year you're going to have to do it this way. So there is no, your precedent doesn't matter. What's happened before doesn't matter. What happens next doesn't matter because the 14 playoff is over. I think it was a really terrible look for college football. That's what I think most of all. More than who was more deserving or what this, should have been or what that should have been. I just think it's a terrible look for college football. I think it is a wonderful sport. I think it's very clear that it is mutating in a way that's not going to sit well with everybody, and it's going to look drastically different over the coming years. But whatever that ends up looking like, I think it just does a disservice to its fans every single year with this charade of a freaking playoff committee and this stupid-ass playoff. This playoff is so dumb. The 4-team cannot go soon enough. I understand, 12 teams not going to be any better. I beg to differ. I think it will be better. I don't think it's going to result in Iowa State winning national championships. I think it's pretty clear the writing on the wall of who's in and who's out as far as the ability to compete in an expanded playoff year in and year out. And it's going to be the same teams that are always at the end of the road when it's the 4-team playoff, and 95% of the teams are at the end of the road when it was a 2-team deal. So not really anything is changing there. It's just that there's more participants to feel like they have a chance whether they really do or not. But this 4-team thing is not it. And I cannot believe I actually saw people up until last week arguing for keeping the 4-team playoff. I mean, it is a joke that we're letting a group of freaking people who have interest in this and the outcome, and the networks who have major interest in the financials of all this, they're the ones picking it. It's the only sport like this. It's the dumbest playoff in the world and the stupidest postseason in the world to determine a champion. And, there's no exact way to do it because it's just set up so differently than everything else. But I know one thing, the 4-team can move on along, and I will never miss this thing. This was the perfect way to close this on out because it just showed what a complete joke this has always been, what a political thing this has always been. And like I said, more than two things can be true at the same time. I do think they put the most competitive field together because I don't believe Florida State was going to be as competitive as Alabama will be in these games. I think you would agree with that, Paul. Yeah. I think everybody would agree with that. And I didn't know that they set out and they said it's the most deserving. But at other times, they've not shown that. They've shown that it is about winning the games. And I think that the one thing that they showed and the one thing that everybody can seemingly agree on is that college football just spit in the face of everybody who tried to parade the regular season as though it was the most special thing in the world because they just threw middle fingers at the regular season over the weekend. And the regular season does not matter and is not as special as you seem to think in your mind or as it was back in the day. That was proven with their decision on Saturday night. I'm not going to go crazy over it. If I was a Florida State fan, I might, but I think even Florida State fans are rational and they understand in the end there is that out clause of, well, it's the 4 best. But there shouldn't be a clause that just fits your narrative depending on the year.
All right.
That's where I think this is all total bullcrap, and that's why I think this thing is just a charade and is the absolute worst way to crown a champion in all of sports, professional or otherwise.
All right, speaking of hypocritical, narrative, double talk, whatever, in 2014 when you had Ohio State get in, hammered Wisconsin 59-0 with a third-string quarterback, and they ended up winning the national title, Baylor and TCU were left out. They didn't have a conference championship game. Eventually they did because we heard about a data point, right? Also, head-to-head then did not matter. But last week, Bill Hancock said, Boo Corrigan said, head-to-head matters. It doesn't matter when they played the game. So let me get to Cardale Jones in Ohio State to get to this year. Cardale Jones at Ohio State won the national title, so they validated being in the 4. That doesn't mean 1 or 2 teams outside of that could not have won the national championship that were also deserving. There was another discussion about who's the top-ranked group of 5 team, right? Liberty, unbeaten, or SMU. Great run. Rett Lashley will join us today at 5. Here's a note on what was said about why Liberty got in as the number 1 group of 5 school because, as they mentioned in the quote, Liberty just continued to win. So they made the decision on the group of 5 number 1 seed in the New Year's Six Bowl, but Florida State just continued to win, did not matter. One more note about Ohio State. Everyone brings up the fact that they boat raced Wisconsin, and they did, and they won the national title. Nobody ever brought up the fact that Virginia Tech kicked their ass in Columbus, 35-21, and Virginia Tech that year ended up 7-6. But that was not something that was mentioned during the run.
Also, it's a bit of a different time to where you consider, and this argument can work either way, but there's no way Cardale Jones would be at Ohio State in today's college football. He would have transferred out. He wasn't going to sit as the third string quarterback. Like, he wouldn't even been there to start the year. He's the third string quarterback going in. He wouldn't have been there. But which even makes what Florida State did even that more impressive, figuring out how to do this in the transfer portal era for 2 games with backup quarterbacks. It also dismisses the fact that there's more than one way to win football games. And while I agree, Craig, Florida State was going to be swimming upstream, up a mountain, like over, rocks and whatever to try to beat Michigan because they would have been the 4th seed to try to beat a Michigan team with their backup quarterback. But that doesn't mean that the coaches and the players couldn't figure out a way to do it, because they just did twice.
I agree.
And beat Louisville, who was like ranked 10th in the country when they played
3 weeks ago. They were 9th.
Yeah.
A lot of you have super chats. We're going to get to those. One on the transfer portal, a couple of them on the committee. We will, I promise, and thank you so much for the $5 or whenever total super chats. It sucks. It sucks if you're a Florida State fan. If you're Alabama, you have your, well, wait a minute, this is what we did. And it was a fantastic win for Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. Texas took care of their business. The one loss was in the Cotton Bowl to Oklahoma in the last second. They took care of their business along the way and looked really, really good doing it. Washington took care of their business, having to beat Oregon not once but twice. And Michigan, of course, rolled out an unbeaten season along the way and beat Iowa 26-0. I hate it. I hate it for Florida State. You would hate it for your team if you were undefeated and didn't get in, even if you're one of those that did get in based on the final committee members. And I don't want to hear Kirk Herbstreit or anybody else or somebody in the committee going, man, we really felt bad about Florida State. No, you didn't. Don't act like you care now, because you didn't care when you made the decision of who plays in the semifinals.
Yeah, I mean, Herbstreit, I think he's made it pretty clear here with all the years that he's put in that he just wants to see the best games, so he's all for this. I saw a tweet from Stephen A., why is he suddenly such a voice on college football? I don't understand. I never see a good take from him, and he's trying to use TCU getting blown out last year as an example for somehow why, like, Florida State got screwed. You mean the TCU that beat Michigan in the semis, Stephen A.? Like, I mean, it's just at least get people who know what they're talking about on there. But I get he draws ratings, but, I mean, that's just like the dumbest example. Like, they got to the national title game. They won a semifinal. How are we still using that as a reasoning for this scenario? It's not even the same thing. But regardless, yeah, there's been a lot of different people, those folks, various others that have talked about this in a million different ways, but I'll just go back to what I said. It's not even for me about like who got in and who got out. To me, the thing that I was just left with this weekend was, once again, how stupid of a way this is to determine a champion, and what a travesty it is for this great sport to be at the end of the road, and rather than people getting excited, and I know there are people that are excited about the playoff, or, you know, being consumed with all the other various things that are going on right now, it's a whole debate about like who got screwed and why this didn't happen. And I just think that sucks. I think that sucks for the teams involved, except for the very few that always get the benefit of the doubt. And it's the ones that get the favored outcome and pretty much everything that's going on right now. And it's going to be the teams that go off and separate on their own here relatively soon. It's probably expedited after this past weekend, as we'll get into as well. But yeah, that's the thing to me, is just what a dumb way to determine a champion. I mean, that's the deal for me. And Florida State, unfortunately, just happens to be the latest example of just how dumb this whole scenario is, that you can go unbeaten in a Power 5 and not get a chance at the title whatsoever. Like, what system is this? What kind of silly championship system is this? And I get, well, it's the ACC's fault for not expanding. I mean, give me a freaking break, man. This is a dumb way. The 12 team can't get here soon enough, and I don't think that's going to be perfect either. But this 4 team is not it, and I can't believe, even last week I was seeing arguments for why the 4 team was the way to stay. This sucks. This 4 team sucks, and I don't care if we see blowouts in the future. At least those teams are getting an opportunity to play for it, and if they get blown out, they get blown out. But guess what? In most people's minds, TCU wouldn't have had a chance to play Michigan last year, and look what happened, right? And there's various other examples that you can come up with.
Yeah, the thing about TCU, people bring up the Georgia game, who would have beaten hell out of most everybody else they played, although they did have to get lucky against Ohio State the game before. You play the game and see what happens. And hopefully that now will be the case even more so when they go to 12 teams starting next year. Speaking of what Florida State dealt with, the committee chairman, not Bill Hancock, the lobbyist, the committee chairman was the athletic director for what school, Paul? Boo Corrigan.
North Carolina.
An ACC team. You wonder how much he got his hands dirty in that room. With all due respect, I don't know.
NC State.
Excuse me. NC State. Cunningham's North Carolina.
Oh, Cunningham, yeah.
But is there a chance, which is also a side story to all this, that what happened to FSU and the ACC, could this bring back the fracture that we saw back during the summer? Is there a chance that something like this could lead to get the hell out of there or do something separate.
So if the argument from the people who tell Florida State to stay in the ACC that the best way for you to get to the championship is to be in the ACC because you can win that, well, that went out the window yesterday too. So that's the thing. Now, I'm a person who, as a Florida State fan, I would not mind watching them play those games in the SEC. It would be fun week in and week out, but I'm not completely for them changing leagues because, like Craig, in Oklahoma, you kind of know that there's a penance to pay for that. That's maybe not what you're used to as running a conference like Oklahoma has or Florida State and Clemson have for the ACC. So you're not going to win it as much as you used to in the past. Now it's less valuable because you could still get in the playoff if you're 12th, but even still, I do think that plays an account of it because if you're Florida State and somebody's trying to convince you that the ACC is the place you got to be, well, it didn't matter for them this year.
Yeah, and that's if the SEC is an option, which we don't know that, and that gets into another part of it. Craig?
Yeah, I think it's the offseason, so realignment was going to perk back up anyways, but I think that decision over the weekend certainly expedited that process as well. A lot of processes getting expedited here recently. I've noticed West Virginia guy, MH Ver's back, so it's realignment season when these rumors start flying that seem just entirely off the wall. So, I guess that's where we've arrived now. Although it's a little confusing to me, just some of the stuff I see. It's kind of outlandish and hard to imagine that's really based in reality as of this moment because there's just all sorts of stuff flying around. But I think the one thing that was mentioned, like realignment, that I just don't understand is, doesn't this all just play into the hands of the people who made this decision to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
So they win again.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that just left out Florida State and their people then take that as that's the ACC's fault? That Florida State didn't get in? Because why? Because they didn't.
Because the letters
because they were part of the alliance a few years ago. Yeah. But why is that the ACC's fault? So it's very odd to me. It's almost like people were just looking for a reason to say this is why we have to leave. It's like, well, you already have plenty of reasons. Like you stated those all during the offseason. But this is now like the final straw
that pulls the scarf
that they had nothing to do with. That the playoff committee, who's influenced by the TV networks, who have set up this whole thing with the SEC getting the teams that they wanted and the Big Ten getting the teams that they wanted, and they've orchestrated this entire thing. And we've all called them out on it. We've all been very clear about the networks and all that. And so now, after this travesty of a decision, the reaction is to just go play right into their hands and have those teams then go join the groups that they are like. Do y'all see where I'm coming from?
No.
Here?
Here's what I also.
That's what I didn't get at all coming out of this weekend.
Here's what we are now. If you don't get your way, you take your toys and go home, or you quit. And that's what that would be. No matter how much of an argument Florida State has, that's who we are now. Watch what happens, not just in sports, but you don't get your way, you get pissed off, you go quit. Instead of just, finding a way next year, go back and do it again.
Yeah, I like joining the SEC would be like, oh, well, we can't beat them, so we got to join them kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And they just screwed us over, so let's go let them.
Let's go make them even more powerful.
Yeah,
right.
let's
go.
Yeah, no. So that to me, is just it's shouldn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way at all. And I don't know. I had another thought of this, but I've had so many running.
Yeah, it's just
Craig,
very
you finish,
strange.
and then we go to two super chats.
Yeah, it's just very strange that I saw this, and I was reading Florida State fans, and they're like, this conference, like, the attendance sucks, and they don't care about it as passionately as Florida State cares about it, and screw the ACC, and it's like, I get that you were already kind of angry with them, and then Drew Weatherford, who's, like, basically leading the charge, the former Knowles quarterback, who's like, this is exactly why we have to leave the ACC. It's like, what did the ACC do? They weren't on the playoff committee. Like, I get, they could give you more money, okay? I get that you weren't happy they invited SMU. I understand those things. Those things were already prevalent, though, before this decision was made. I just thought it was a very strange reaction to go, they got screwed. This is somehow the ACC's fault, and this is why we now need to go join the two conferences that have basically been working with the TV networks to screw everybody and change college football. So you're just playing into their hands. You're not making any kind of grand statement. So I just thought that was really strange and a weird reaction to it all. But I get the frustrations. I just think that you're doing exactly what the people pulling the puppet strings want you to do, and you're only going to hasten the transformation into the 2 Super League thing that, we'll see what that ends up looking like on the other end. But, it's a weird deal right now. And obviously because of all of that, realignment has now come back to the forefront. And I don't know how imminent anything is with FSU or the ACC even for that matter, but it's definitely going to be a topic of conversation because now it's been used as part of the storyline now is that, if they wouldn't have been in the ACC, then they would have gotten in. Would they have in 4-team playoff? And on the other side of that, it's an expanded playoff next year. So you're going to get in.
Your odds are even better.
So that was so bizarre.
All right, we will get to the Big 12 bowl schedule later on. We will also get to the Heisman vote deadline. That's today at 4 o'clock. In about 29 minutes, it closes. Houston with a new football coach of Willie Fritz, among much more. And I also will put up a link into the bowl game Pick'em contest brought to you by TexasBeefHouse.com. And also thanks to Kim Coulter, we have one more of those left. It will be the entire bowl season and into the semifinals and championship game. From, Matt Rogers, thank you for the super chat. Shouldn't FSU beating a 10-win Louisville with a third-string quarterback been confirmation they are, in fact, one of the best teams? College football, this is from Matt, is rigged by ESPN and SEC. Let me read the other one on that. Does it feel like the committee sent a clear message the Big Ten and the SEC are the only conferences that matter? Did we just witness form of relegation? The Big 12's in it, and so is the Pac-12.
Well, but the Big 12 team and the Pac-12 team are both going to be in those leagues next year, too. So, there's a little bit of that in there. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that, finding different ways to win, was a cool thing. That's a testament to your coaching staff. That's a testament to your players to figure it out. And for FSU to win with Brock Glenn, who was an absolute deer in the headlights the other night, and they found a way to around it. And he did not, I'm not going to tell you he didn't play well, but he didn't make the big mistake, which is what they didn't need him to do. And they overcame a gigantic mistake on special teams. And they just did it. Well, just why not give them the chance to see if that works? It probably won't. If
Michigan would have won a game like that with their defense, we'd hear about how great their defense was at championship level.
A playoff where you can leave out a 13-0 Power 5 champion is a doofus type of playoff. It's the dumbest setup in the world. I know I'm going to keep harping on that, but it was just so evident this weekend of what system are we rooting for here? Are we celebrating here? And I know none of us are celebrating it, but it's what are we even doing with this thing? I don't know. You would think that would be a feather in their cap as opposed to a, detriment. But we're living in a different kind of world where it's just basically a bunch of old fuddy-duddies in a room with their various reasons for why they want certain teams to get in and their various, reasons as to why this team looks better than this team, and none of it ever makes any sense. None of it's ever the same week to week. That's why this whole thing's a sham to begin with, is that there's no structure that makes any sense whatsoever. It's just what you have to say to explain why you did what you wanted to do to begin with, and that's basically what we saw this weekend. They wanted those 4 teams, and they just explained it the way that they needed to explain it, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. But yeah, you would think that winning with your third-string quarterback against a very good Louisville team and winning with your defense, your exceptional defense, would be a feather in your cap or a nice thing on your resume. And Florida State just got told that it wasn't a big deal or a feather in their cap or very impressive, and it didn't matter. And I think that that's just, again, spitting in the face of the entire concept of the regular season and of conference championships. And I don't want to hear anybody talk about the magical regular season and every given Saturday special and all this bowl. We just saw that's not the case this past weekend.
I wonder if that changes now if they expand it to 12. Is now the regular season less important or more important?
I think it remains to be seen.
Okay.
But all I know is there doesn't need to be a committee of people just sitting around making all these choices.
All right.
I think that's what's the most garbage thing about this, because there's just too many agendas There's too much influence by the networks, and I think that that's just a really rotten way to do it. And I know it's not the NFL where you can just say, here's 32, they're divided this, and we take the top 4. But damn, try to come up with a way where it's like that, because at least that makes some sense.
The NFL, you win your division, you're in, and if you have the best records below that, you get a wild card playoff. CWJ 128. Honestly, everything just went against FSU. If Alabama does not hit 4th and 31 against Auburn, an Auburn team that lost to New Mexico State. And I'm not anti-Alabama. I love Nick Saban. What he's done this year might be his best coaching job ever. I hate the system, but at the same time, we don't look at the warts on the other teams, do we? We look at the warts on the team that we leave out.
No, it's like the committee saying one week this matters and the next week it's this matters. And it's what matters to explain what they wanted to get done. And so, yeah, in the case of Alabama, well, let's ignore that. Let's ignore that they needed 4th and 31 against a bad Auburn team to survive at the last second. But let's dwell on this other thing, and let's put the microscope on Florida State's warts as opposed to Alabama's warts. And people just go along with it because there's, enough people that just don't care. We want the best games, and that's all that matters, and how you get there doesn't really matter. And so, again, the regular season doesn't seem to matter in this whole college football present day that we're living in right now. And as to the other texture, we appreciate both of the super chats there, and for anybody else, we appreciate those as well. But, yeah, I think you did see the cracks starting to grow when it comes to the whole separation thing. I think you're seeing that in the courts right now with the way it's setting up with NIL. But I think that and I don't know where it began. I want to read the book. I want to see the HBO show on where the seeds were planted, because just the way that this has sort of been shuffled around and moved around. And granted, there's some things that have had to happen along the way, like Texas had to win all of its games, or Alabama had to win, or whatever, to make it the way it turned out.
Sure.
But there has been this massaging of the leagues and the expansion and the realignment and all of that. And it does seem like it's been one grand master plan. And it's been talked about for 3-4 years now at this point. And it's all now starting to come to a head. And you saw that with Florida State and the whole world. Now they've got to join the SEC and basically just continue on down that path. And so whoever orchestrated that from the very beginning, probably Greg Sankey and various others, I mean,
would have been Sly, right?
Super villain master plan. I mean, truly super villain master plan with Delaney and Sankey and the networks and whoever else was involved, because all these years it's been slowly but surely coming to fruition. And now we're getting to the point where, like, NIL is going to meet it, and the courts and everything else, and it's going to probably happen. Yeah, I think that's where we're headed right now.
And Florida have some legislators and senators, et cetera. They're wanting to get, hey, let's have pictures of text. This is an opinion poll. It's not like a jury trial.
Well,
we have to take a break in about 3 minutes.
They say that. They're just trying to get the people from calling them.
I know.
But
I know.
I do find it interesting, and you guys can ponder on this. Jim Phillips didn't lobby at all, because he thought there's no way this is going to happen. And look, Greg Sankey is playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers. I get that. But Jim Phillips didn't lobby, like, when asked, like, do you think they should, like, he never thought that it would be a thing.
He never brought up Sesame Street.
Yeah, he never did that. And he shouldn't have to. But Greg Sankey knew. He knew. Like, this is a possibility.
But who gave him that opportunity to talk?
Yeah.
What show, what network gave Greg Sankey a chance to go on and campaign?
ESPN.
The night before the election.
Yeah.
From UW fan Jim, $2 super chat to Penix for Heisman. Kim, we're going to get to yours on about the transfer portal. But very, very good point about the money. And we'll get to yours, the $9.99 super chat. We appreciate you for that.
Yeah, Michael Penix for Heisman. I mean, certainly deserving of a vote. I think Jaden Daniels come out this weekend again, and you're seeing a lot of the sway there from a lot of the same talking heads about, him being the favorite. But, I mean, shoot, coming out of that game this past weekend, I mean, Michael Penix's ability to throw the football, it's going to be a terrific matchup with Texas. And, yeah, I think he's deserving of a lot of Heisman love. He was really good, has been really good all year long. And I think it's a shame that his star kind of faded. It would seem like here towards the tail end as far as being in that conversation, but he's absolutely deserving of being right there in the mix for that award. And, if you chose to vote for him, then I'm certainly not docking anybody that chooses to do that.
I'll tell you this, it's not easy to have the vote. It's fun when you do. It's exciting, but also at the same time, man, this year, I got to tell you, it was just brutal, in my opinion. When we come back, I saw this tweet from a guest that we're going to have, Jason Belzer, founder of @AthleteNIL. You're in the transfer portal, but if you breach a contract with a collective, don't be surprised when, one, you don't get your agreement paid out, or you get sued when you don't fulfill your deliveries. And so all of that and more, we'll hear from Jason Belzer as the transfer portal went wide open earlier today officially. And this is 365 Sports.
Ring in the new year with unbeatable savings on the new 2023 Ram trucks during the wrap-up-the-year sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. Take advantage of this limited-time opportunity and start the new year in style. Shop our great selection in-store or online today.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue. Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue. Next in line.
Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
We will get back to the college football playoff discussion, what it might mean not only for this year but future years when they expand to 12, what it could mean for conference realignment talk and more, plus Baylor's offensive coordinator Jake Spavital, introduced today. We'll hear from him a little bit after 4 o'clock. Jason Belzer, founder for Athlete NIL, attorney representing coaches, joins us on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul, and I'm David Smoak. Jason, I just happened to see your tweet about it's transfer portal, it's wide open. It's one thing when you're being flirted with or you're being courted, oh man, I get that kind of money. Your thoughts about the players, how many, in your opinion, might enter the transfer portal, move on somewhere else, and yet not fulfill their own commitment?
We're going to have at least a couple of thousand kids in the transfer portal. It will likely be the most active transfer portal in the history of the NCAA. It will also be the largest amount of money that will be transacted. We believe that the number will be in the area of around $400 million that will be issued via these collectives over the next year. And I am a big believer that we will be in revenue share in 2025. So this might be the most money ever given out through NIL at least. And so the next couple of weeks are going to be certainly a very busy time for collectives and coaching staffs as they make their way through this process.
So you mentioned in your tweet about adult actions have adult consequences, and how much of that is prevalent where you guys are not, maybe understanding that you have deliverables that you had to do and you've decided to leave Texas A&M and go to USC. Well, you still owe the Aggie Collective whatever you promised them.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The reality is, and to preface it for listeners, our organization, Student Athlete NIL, runs more than 40 different collectives. So I can only speak to the schools that we work with, schools like Oklahoma and Rutgers and Wake Forest and Georgia Tech and Notre Dame. When we sign a student athlete, as a business, we have expectations that that student athlete will uphold their end of the bargain. And that end of the bargain is not that they will continue to be a student athlete at the particular university, but we are pre-purchasing assets from them. Assets like social media posts, appearances, autographs. And so when a student athlete gets up and says, hey, I no longer want to be at this university for whatever reason, that's their decision. They're free to do it. But we have an expectation that they will see through the end of the contract. And if they don't, then there's two options. Option number one is that we don't have to pay them what their money is owed, right? Because they didn't finish their contract. Just like if you sign an agreement to work for a company and then you get up 6 months into it, they're not going to pay you the other 6 months. And if they say, well, we want our money, well, we're going to say, well, you have to follow through. And if you're transferring from Oklahoma to Texas, well, you're going to have to show up at an Oklahoma Sooners football event, even though you're a Texas football player. How many student athletes are going to want to do the latter? Pretty much nobody. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. That being said, my assumption is that the majority of athletes that are entering the portal, they may have an offer somewhere else already. But at the other end of it, last year, of all the student athletes that entered the portal, a good 1/3 of them didn't end up anywhere, meaning they thought they were going to get in the portal and make some money somewhere else, and they ended up without a scholarship at any program. So there are some student athletes that are going to have a very rude awakening, and perhaps that's just a good life lesson for them.
You mentioned the $400 million that's out there that you believe is going to be transacted this year. Matt Rule said last week between $1 million and $2 million for quarterback. Did he nail that, or did he undershoot it?
So there's about 10 to 15 schools maximum that are going to pay that type of money for a quarterback. I can tell you absolutely. Listen, we work with the University of Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel went into the portal today. I've had conversations with Dylan in the past, and I've told him his market value is probably worth more than $1.5 million. But it doesn't mean that every quarterback is going to get paid that amount of money. Yesterday, I posted data that we have collected from our schools that gives a median look at how much student athletes are going to earn based on their rating. And the median quarterback on the FBS level, a top 25 quarterback, is going to make about $350,000. That being said, as of today, we're talking about the 23 season. There's maybe 20 to 30 football players that are actually making more than $1 million total in NIL. So there are not a lot of them. And most of those are quarterbacks.
You mentioned revenue sharing as well coming our way, and you said it as soon as 2025. What form does that take, and how does that get done? Where the universities who it's like taking their medicine on this and they really don't want to agree to this and make it work.
I think the universities are not going to have the choice to agree to it. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a forced decision, and it's either going to be forced upon them through legislation. As an example, Senator Cruz is trying to push through legislation that allows for revenue sharing and creates a safe harbor position so that Student athletes don't have to be deemed employees. I am not confident that any legislation will get through. And so it's most likely that this will either be forced upon them through the courts, which will have a decision by the end of next year on these subjects, or there will be some sort of preemptive move, likely by the SEC conference. What I can tell you is that as an organization that works with several SEC schools, the schools have begun, and this is not anything that isn't out there. There's a reason why the biggest collectives in college sports are in the SEC. And it's not just because there's more money at a school like Alabama than there is at a school like Michigan. It is that the SEC is preparing themselves. They're weaning themselves off of that money that used to go to the athletics department and saying, hey, in a year or two, we're going to be at revenue share anyway. We're going to have to pay our football players at least $10 million. We might as well learn to do it today instead of being surprised next year or in 2 years when we have to do it formally. But for all the other schools, they're not prepared. There are many Power 5 institutions that are operating at $1-2 million in NIL for their football teams. They will not survive this transition into a revenue share environment, unfortunately.
Jason, how many of the players that are a part of the collectives that you run, the ones who do sign agreements with whatever school, SEC, Big Ten, ACC, Pac-12, Big 12, or Troy, for example, in the Sun Belt, or somebody else in the American, how many of them actually, in your opinion, understand it's not just they get money, but what they have to do in return?
The majority have an understanding that there is some sort of requirement. Most of them believe that they are signing this contract because they are getting paid to play at that particular university. But that's not the truth, right? The truth is that we have to be able to go out there and actually create value from this. It's not my decision as a business owner what happens, whether or not that kid plays a snap, whether or not he performs well. There is an expectation of return on value. And we have, again, I can only speak for us and our organization that runs these collectives, we have an expectation that that value will be returned to us. Some collectives may not, right? There may be a collective at a school that says we're simply a conduit to launder money to players. Mm-hmm. And we don't care whether or not they actually do anything for it. For us, it's a very different operation. And so it's, a unique position that we have to be able to balance. I mean, it's no secret. I'll give you an example again. I'll use Dillon Gabriel. I think very highly of him, but we're running a big campaign at Oklahoma right now, and Dillon is the star of that campaign. Well, today he's no longer an Oklahoma football player, and so I have to be able to deal with the repercussions, the business repercussions of having his image posted on advertisements that no longer validate what I'm trying to sell. And so that is a reality, right? If you're going to move and transfer and you did an endorsement deal with the local business, that business is not going to be interested in working with you anymore, and they're going to feel like your contract was breached.
Can you go back and go back to what you were saying about the SEC and sort of preparing behind the scenes? I'm sure, as you well know, Jason, there's been this long-standing fear, and it's really bubbled up here with all the realignment the last few years about the break-off, right? The Super 2, the Power 2, the break-off. Kind of playing into what you said, that certainly feels like that's one of those types of issues that could further enhance or completely separate the haves from the have-nots. Is that how you see it, and would you lump in the Big Ten because of all the money that they're getting, or do you feel, or do you sense that they're preparing in much the same way? For example, those two kind of being on an island by themselves, doing things a different way, whereas the others don't or can't play that way necessarily.
Yeah, so clearly there's a larger delta in the SEC and the Big Ten as it relates to total athletic budget, total revenue via multimedia rights and other initiatives, ticket revenue and other deals. Obviously, Michigan State generates a lot more money in ticket revenue than Rutgers. But it's not just the SEC. I can't sit here and say to you that Mississippi State and Vanderbilt and Rutgers and Northwestern are going to be part of this new whatever college football looks like in the next couple of years, because they don't bring the same type of value that a lot of these other larger institutions do. And so the short answer is that, yes, part of it is the money, and these leagues are quietly preparing themselves, but it doesn't mean that each of these institutions are going to be part of that transition. And if they want to be part of that transition, I'm a Rutgers alum. I played football there. If Rutgers wants to be part of that, Rutgers is going to have to make some very difficult decisions about the number of programs that it has. Maybe the most guaranteed implication of what will happen when we move to revenue share is that we will see women's sports, as an example, gutted, absolutely gutted across these institutions. Because if I have 100 football player and basketball players that I need to pay now, likely as employees, that's 100 women's scholarships I no longer need and no longer can afford to have. And that's just the reality.
So with Title IX, that means also that some men's sports are going to gut it as well, because you got to make those things balance, right?
Not necessarily, because what Title IX says an equal balance, but if a student athlete is deemed an employee, they're no longer a student athlete, they're an employee. Oh. And so you no longer have to balance out 85 football scholarships with 85 women's scholarships in other sports.
Jason,
so there goes all your women's programs.
I'm sorry, but would that then also all of a sudden, for a group that has more important things to deal with than college athletics, would that then not get people in Congress' eyes a little more focused because they'll get hammered if, in fact, women's sports just disappears?
It's too late by then. I mean, it'll be too late. If once it happens, how could any congressman or senator come in and say, well, you can't do this? What are they going to tell their state university? Come up with an extra $10 million? It's too late, right? What are they going to start appropriating state taxes to do it? Well, good luck, right? The point is, if they don't fix that solution now, they're going to have a problem, which is why Senator Cruz's legislation is really the only thing that likely can save women's sports, because what it does is it allows that safe harbor position that basically says that football and basketball players will not be considered employees. And so it allows some flexibility for the university from that perspective. But, you know, we all know what Congress is doing these days, and I'm not very optimistic that they're going to be able to find the solution to this when there's a lot of other bigger problems they have to worry about.
Yeah, like staying open.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So we didn't do this at the beginning, but we probably should here at the end, just for people who maybe been joining us like in the middle. What does Athlete NIL as a group, what does your organization do that's maybe a little different than just being a solitary collective of ex-schools fans that are sending money out to players?
Yeah, so I appreciate that. We are what we refer to as an agency of record. We are now the largest deal maker in NIL. We have more than 1,000 student athletes that are under retainer contract with us across more than 40 different institutions. So we are essentially going into institutions, starting collectives, and putting entire rosters on contracts where those student athletes are working off that money by doing activations for us, whether those are social media posts or other things. And so if you go to Oklahoma, as an example, where probably some of your listeners are from, every single football, men's basketball, and softball athlete at the university is under our payroll. No different than any of our other institutions. So we have a lens across multiple schools versus one independent collective that may be just hustling for their individual athletes. We are now distributing more money and doing more deals than any single entity out there, other than the NCAA, put it that way.
All right, Jason, good stuff. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and good luck with whatever moves forward in the business of NIL. And speaking of that, of course, we want to welcome, as we did late last week, GXG as one of our newest sponsors of what we do every day here on 365 Sports. And speaking of that, we'll get back to maybe the weekend of Baylor football. We'll hear from Jake Spavital. We will get into the Big 12 schedule as far as the bowl games, and we will also spend time making sure we don't talk so much about the college football standings that we don't go over some of the college football conference championship games too. So much to get to. Craig also sent a note that mentioned, is this the death of modern college football? That's just let him discuss that a little bit later on. We will do that too. This is 365 Sports. Ideal MRI, Dr. Rob Maxey, Ideal MRI in the Central Texas Marketplace just off of I-35 in Waco. If you have a doctor or your doctor is asking you to get a better look at whatever is hurting you, it might be in your back, it might be in your hip, it might be in your shoulder, could be in your knee. Something doesn't feel right and it hurts and you're taking medications, maybe painkillers, or something to try to alleviate that so you can sleep or you can work or you can remain focused and not be shut down. Ideal MRI can get the information you need, the evidence you need, or at least clear the air, not that, and then find out what else it could be, a muscle, a ligament, whatever it could be. And it's $497 or less every single time. The average is $1,100 for an MRI, and it continues to rise. So if, in fact, you need an MRI, tell your doctor. Explain to them if they don't know already, and they probably do, idealmri.com.
The right call can make all the difference on and off the field. I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. When it's time for a new car, truck, or SUV, Bird Colgan Ford is the right call. Come check out our award-winning lineup of best-selling models in their class, like the Mustang, Explorer, Expedition, F-150, and Super Duty. Make the right call for your next vehicle at Bird Colgan Ford. Bird Colgan Ford proudly supports Baylor Athletics. Sic 'em Bears.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, is your holiday item superstore. Half spiral hams, 8 to 10 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Pit hams, 12 pounds for $4.45 a pound. Bone-in hams, 18 to 22 pounds for $3.40 per pound. Whole raw turkeys from 12 to 16 pounds for $2.50 a pound. Whole smoked turkeys, that's smoked turkeys at 9 to 12 pounds for $3.75 a pound. And mini pit hams, 6 to 8 pounds for $5.99 a pound. And don't forget, they have full service butcher shop where you can find what you want: pork, poultry, seafood, and beef. And I bring up the beef because big beef tenderloin or a prime rib. Brian Bauer and the Bauer family, full service bakery with fresh baked kolaches every morning and bread and cold beer and wine. Tailgate needs from pellet fuel to charcoal. Waco Custom Marketplace and the holiday items, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sick'em 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
All right, this 4 o'clock hour. In a moment, we'll hear some of what we heard today from Jake Spavital, the new offensive coordinator at Baylor. Phil Bennett in this hour. J.J. Joe, former Baylor quarterback, will join us today as well at 4:45. And Rett Lashley, SMU head coach, what a year for them and what they have coming up with the ACC. Cedric Golden of the Austin American-Statesman on UT and the run they made and who they are and what they have ahead of them as they are peaking at just the perfect time. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina on David Smoak. Over the weekend, GXG, we've told you, and Mac Rhodes has said this, also Jeremy Fudge, among others, that they're going all in and more public than ever before about Baylor and the NIL. What was going to happen with Richard Reese? The 2 kick returns only reminded everybody how dynamic he was. He's back. There's his tweet. Green and gold, Richard Reese. Thoughts that he might leave. He's back. Also, Monterey Baldwin, who was one of their more dynamic players. Craig Smoak earlier mentioning again that he's back for the 2024 year. Feels like a win for Aranda Spavital and crew. While those two are coming back, there is this one. Blake Shapen, who we knew last week was going to enter the portal, is still in the portal. He talked with Jake Spavital over the weekend. Spavital will have that for you on the Blake Shapen news. He's still in the portal. And tight end Drake Dabney, one of the better players on the team, his image and saying, thank you, Baylor, he now has also entered the portal. Craig, we'll start with you, then Paul, and we'll discuss these four names and then get to Jake Spavital.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I think Baylor's had like over 50 guys or around 50 guys that have pledged to come back. I sure hope this isn't a yearly thing where you have to go check the entire roster off after the season wraps up. I've not seen everybody else or anybody else for that matter doing that, but I guess with their situation with Aranda and coming back and it being known that this is really his last year if he doesn't get it turned around, and just all the questions about who they're going to have on the roster and all that. It's a way of, creating some spirit and also some, belief in what they have coming back and just kind of getting things drummed up and exciting after a very long trying year. And so it's been interesting to see that process play out. And like I said, there's been like 50 guys now at this point who have publicly made a decision of some sort. So on the one hand, it's like, how many guys do you want back and how many guys do you need to turn over to be better next year? Or you're, I guess, banking on that so much of that roster was young and that you just simply need them back in to have another year with some different coaching, and that will be the cure-all for what ailed you. I mean, that's the way to read it now, given that you're bringing back so many of those guys. So, yeah, a lot of the young players, but those that you mentioned, I mean, Richard Reese, I'm curious to see how he fits in Spavital's offense, but obviously a player who did not get used to the best of his ability this season in the offense they were running with Jeff Grimes. He was basically a non-factor in so many ways compared to the year prior. Who was the other one that's coming back? Monterey Baldwin, I mean, that's huge. I think in this spread up tempo offense, he should be able to thrive in that. That's a guy who very well could have walked into the portal and we would never have seen him again. But to get him back, I was almost surprised by that. Not so much Richard Reese, although I was a little bit there. But Monterey Baldwin, I figured he'd probably go somewhere else. And so to see him come back, I think is great news for them. So that's two playmakers that they have. And then you don't have to go out in the portal and be like, we need a slot wide receiver who can do this or do that. You've got a couple of guys. You've got a guy, and for that specific example with Monterey Baldwin. For the other two, Dabney, it was always going to be NFL or, the potential of coming back or the potential of entering the portal, and I just thought that the portal might be the last option, but that's where he's headed, and so, good for him. I'm sure he'll make a mint and, go play for a team that's, competitive and probably in the mix for some championships, and he's earned that right, but still tough to see him go. He was your best receiver for the most part this past season, right there with Monterey Baldwin. So that's a blow for the tight end room and a blow for the offense just overall. That's not one that you really are like, oh, that's good attrition, or we wanted to see that. The Dabney one's a guy you would have liked to have had him back. And then Blake Shapen, I think at this point I'm all for it. I'm all for him going and doing something different. When they talked last week about having a conversation with Blake and potentially changing his mind, and Spavital even left that open earlier today as well, that they're still continuing those conversations. I can see the logic in bringing him back, but I also see the absolute need to just move on at this point. And so if he stays in the portal, as it appears that he will, that means he's most likely moving on, and I think that's probably best for all parties involved at the end of the day. Even though it would make the quarterback depth issue a lot simpler, you'd still have the whole dilemma of running back your quarterback competition from last year. And then what happens after spring when you crown, what if Shapen beats out Sawyer Robertson again? Does Sawyer Robertson say, screw this, I'm out of here? So you can avoid that issue, but they're going to need some quarterback help with Shapen in the portal. I'm just not going to lose a lot of sleep over the fact that they're not going to have him on the roster. So one guy that you hate to see go, one guy that you understand, and it's not a huge deal in the long run, in my opinion. And then a couple of guys you are more than happy to have back that should be big contributors for you next year. So a mixed bag, but that is the transfer portal in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think making sure you got the two best playmakers on the roster back in this new offense was especially one that if you keep Richard Reese and you keep Monterey Baldwin, it's going to highlight them a lot better than the last offense did. So Yeah, it's very important to keep those guys. And, you know, there's going to be guys that walk into the portal that nobody's going to be like, oh, no, you know, that's going to happen.
There's some that probably were, I mean, in a way, hey, you probably need to look somewhere else.
But look, I agree with Craig 100% in that I think Blake Shapen will probably be a better fit somewhere else right now, and that Baylor's probably best off not to try to run it back. It's just one of those things of like, get a fresh start, see what's going to get a new offense, new quarterback, all those things. I think Sawyer Robertson's skill set lends itself to this offense as well. I mean, he was already playing an elite system when he transferred in, which is why it was kind of a big jump when they got him in that offense in the wide zone. So yeah, I think that's best for everybody. Drake Dabney, you know, go to a place that's going to feature the tight end a little bit more than this offense will and knock yourself out. Plus, they had kind of a glut of tight ends on the roster, so it was going to kind of happen anyway. Find the fits that are best for you and move on. That's how college football works now. And so they've got their work cut out for them, and it's not really skill positions that are the problem, guys, as we know. I mean, they could get better at wide receiver. I think Keytron Jackson another year in a system that maybe highlights what he can do will be better. Hal Presley's reliable, but they probably need to go get more wide receivers. But this is about the big dudes, the hogs up front.
And speaking of that, Eric Mateos is on his way to Arkansas, and now they're looking for a new offensive line coach. Craig?
Yeah, I just think with Blake Shapen, it's like you've done that now the last couple years, and if you're going to go out swinging one final fight, I mean, why not shake it up and try something new? Like, I just think it would be a real bummer to run it back again and basically be like, you look in the mirror and you don't see that much of a difference, and you try to no, this year, really, I just think Blake Shapen kind of represents the last couple of years, if that makes sense. And so with this one final swing for Aranda to get it right, I mean, go all in on a new guy and see if that makes a difference for you. Sawyer Robertson or whoever you might go get in the portal, what we do know is they're going to be in the portal, and they will be, looking for a quarterback amongst other things. But Paul's right, and I'm not so much worried about the skill guys. I do think that, we still need to see, does Dominic Richardson come back at running back to complete that group? We haven't seen that just yet. I think most of the receivers outside of a couple of them, Armani Winfield, Hal Presley, have not declared. But you have a good group to work with there, but you're going to probably need to add a receiver or two. I think you're good on tight ends for the most part. Spavital actually is not opposed to using, he said today he works with the ingredients that are in the kitchen, so their glut of tight ends is actually not a negative. It's something that he can use, but all of it does come back to whether it's offense or defense, where a lot of other guys have already pledged to return as well. It does come back to the lines. And that's where I'm very curious to see how they, go about trying to fix the offensive line in particular, because guess what everybody else in the portal is looking for? They're looking for quarterbacks just like you. They're looking for offensive linemen just like you. They're looking for defensive linemen just like you. And so what makes you special, or what makes you have the ability to go and get the right guys, the right fits that can make impacts next year? It has to be next year for Aranda. This is not any 2-3 years down the line if they pan out into no. You need guys through the portal that can help you win right now, or you're not going to have any more opportunities to try and go win. So yeah, the skill guys, those have kind of cleared themselves up, and that's a good start for Aranda this offseason, and Spavital and the rest of the staff. But they do have a running backs coach vacancy now with A.J. Stewart gone after just 1 year. They have the O-line coach vacancy with Eric Mateos gone to Arkansas, so they need to fill those as well. But, it's not an impossible task, but it's going to be very curious to see how they maneuver through a very crowded marketplace.
All right, speaking of the offense and what they're going to do, obviously Jake Spavital announced last week, and he was today available to the media along with head coach Dave Aranda. Here are 3 or 4 answers that Spavital had based on questions today about the Baylor offense.
Jake, David Smoak, 365 Sports. Have you already had time, or have you had time to look at the personnel? Some are coming back, some are not. Have you had time, and how does that affect what you do immediately on the recruiting trail?
Yeah, fortunately, I've been up against these guys, recently, so I have a pretty good idea. But in today's ever-changing climate of college football, there's going to be a lot of moving parts. Like, as you guys saw, you wake up this morning and the whole country is, moving and shaking, and ESPN alerts are hitting your phone, and so it's more about like what I see is that there's not much attrition at this school compared to most, and that's a compliment to Coach Aranda and the culture that he's created here. So you're allowed to really just kind of look at what we currently have, which I have looked at a few of these guys. I do think there's pieces in place to be successful here. I truly do. And I do think that the spread system, you don't have to be perfect all the time. And it allows these guys to play more freely and openly. And that's something that where you may not be the most talented person, but you can have a lot of success in this system. And, like there will be a lot of moving and shaking, as I've said, over the next, month. But, once it like solidifies down, we'll have a pretty good direction on what we're going to go from a personnel standpoint.
Hi, Jake. Shaji Adam with ABC 25. You kind of touched on it. What is the identity of the offense that you want to have on the field and off the field?
Yeah, we're going to be a spread up tempo offense, and you probably hear that, heard a lot. But like playing with tempo is going to give us an edge. It really does. I think in today's time, defenses are so innovative, so creative. Like you used to be able to go up against a team that was a 4-down team, and that's what they do the entire game. Now you got to block it all. They're going to be in bear fronts and odd fronts and 4-down fronts, everything. So I think tempo kind of really combats that at times and puts our guys in better positions where they don't have to block all the exotic looks. So we're going to be a spread-up tempo team. But I think the run game, what we've done over the years, is more of a downhill approach, because – again, there's so much variety with defensive fronts. If you do get caught in a bad look at times, and you can at least manage to get that back to the line of scrimmage where you're not dealing with negative plays and you're still trying to play and stay on course and not play behind the chains. But you've got to establish a run game, so you play fast and you got to hammer the ball downhill. And then it's all about vertical shots down the field. And I always try to take around 10 shots vertically down the field a game. That's like the goal that I'm always trying to hit. So you're going to see a lot of vertical shots down the field. And then just from my air raid background as well, there will be an element of quick game and perimeter screen game and everything to get the defense running sideline to sideline. And the theory behind that is if you're playing with a great pace and you're getting the defense to run sideline to sidelines, like you can get them to wear down pretty quickly. And at that point, then the ball's in our court. So there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of conditioning involved. There's a lot of an edge and toughness, but if you're just playing with a good pace and you're being aggressive and tough and running downhill and still keeping them on their toes of going sideline to sideline and throwing it vertically, it's a really good balance, and it's very, very tough to defend.
Jake, the news of Blake entering the transfer portal kind of broke today with the portal opening. What's the priority there, obviously, with the spread offense needing a quarterback to run that system, and do you attack the transfer portal yourself to find that guy?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to. If Blake decides not to come back, I'm still in conversations with Blake. I get, new guy and coming in, a lot of unknowns, and he's got to build a relationship with me. So that's still on the table. But just from a depth purpose, this is why, especially at Texas State, when I was in these scenarios, you have to build depth, and sometimes the easiest way to do that is to get into the portal. But I do believe quarterback play is the key to success. I really do. The best offenses I've ever had, I've had really good quarterbacks, and I've been fortunate. I think I've coached 10 NFL QBs, and those have been some pretty solid offenses when you got a good guy, at the trigger man at that position. So that's going to be that importance. But losing Blake, I think he's a great player, and he's a proven player and played a lot of games, and we'll see where it goes from there. Just still have the dialogue and conversations with him, and then still be kind of searching around for anybody else.
All right, so there's Jake Spavital earlier today with Dave Aranda. Then he hit the road immediately as he needs to, as everybody else who can should, including whatever they do filling the positions at running back and offensive line coach too. We will hear from Phil Bennett momentarily on Jake Spavital, but also Jake Spavital's offensive line coach at Cal is now the offensive coordinator at Cal, Mike Blesh, who was once a high school coach at Temple with Mike Spradlin, and then went to UNT Tulsa and has been around other places too. The other super chat we did not get to was from Kim Coulter. Kim, don't you think it's possible, if not probable, given the statement from Nebraska's Matt Rule that it now takes millions to get a quarterback, the money is so large the kids must enter the portal, they would be dumb not to?
Well, I think it's a good super chat to follow up Jason Belzer that we had earlier. Jason said that, there's there's a few schools that have the wherewithal financially to be able to do that. So there's not a whole lot of guys that are in that tax bracket, but it's going to make people think. I mean, like, it's hard to tell somebody that, right? You know, if you think that you're $1 million quarterback and you're going to go into the portal, it's hard for me as a coach who's not going to pay you $1 million to be like, hey, you're not you're $100,000 guy, but you're not $1 million guy. We'd love to have you for $100,000, but that's hard to tell people. But yeah, I do think that very reason and that number being out there is why you're going to see a lot of quarterbacks in the portal, and they're always going to have a place to go, and they're always going to make some NIL. I think there's going to be some disappointment in that, you know, you think like, oh, I'm going to go so-and-so and I'll get 100,000 or $1 million, and you might get in six figures, but you're still getting money. So
yeah, I think Jason kind of pointed this out, but it's very misleading, and I know that's not what Matt Rule was doing. He was just talking about, you know, what he's seen so far, but it does set a bad example of, like, that's just what the norm is, and it's not even close to being the truthful norm. $1.5 million for just a quarterback. I mean, yeah, for the best quarterbacks that are out there, not for just any quarterback. So I do think that needs some clarification for those that come across and just read that headline. It's like, yeah, for Dylan Gabriel, he'll probably get $1.5 million.
Ukulele?
I don't even know about $1.5 million, but yeah, maybe that kind of a guy would as well. Sure. As far as this pool goes, Cam Ward absolutely will get $1.5 million, if not more. But there's some others that have joined the fray that I'm not paying seven figures to in no way, shape, or form. I don't care how bad I need a quarterback; that can be spent better elsewhere. So, I mean, it's very interesting. I do think too. It's like who was that earlier? It was an A&M player that was talking about how there was all that talk about how they were all making all of this money right away, and they weren't even getting anything initially. But the reason everybody thought they were getting money was because some random poster had said that they were getting paid this much money, and then that just got taken by Longhorn fans and whoever else wanted to poke fun at A&M and be like, see. It's just all it was all
Bobby
very misleading.
Taylor, wasn't it?
Huh?
Was it Bobby Taylor talked about
it might have
2
been.
years ago? You would have told me Jimbo Fisher was gone.
Yeah.
And that all these millions of dollars that people were saying we were getting, and some people responded. I know a couple of them. Life comes at you fast.
Yeah, but they weren't getting anything. And yet the public perception was that they were raking in millions of dollars. And it was like, no, that's not exactly what was going on there. So I do think there's a lot of just like fake noise that's out there as well. I think some of that's driven by NIL reporters and the type where that's kind of their angle is to really pump that up. But it's a very interesting landscape, and it's not. I think to the point I'm trying to make, it's not always what you hear, it's not always what you read, it's not always what you see. And
right.
So some see that Matt Rule quote and they think that's just how it is, and it's like, no, that's a very select grouping that he's talking about for a big time quarterback. But who knows? Maybe that's just the norm here sooner rather than later with all of the money that's going to be flowing for a couple of conferences in particular.
Phil Bennett, longtime college football coach, J.J. Joe on Spavital. He also made the comment they need to sign or seal up their speed, which they did with Reese and what they did with Monterey. And his thoughts about that. He's been very outspoken about it. And we're not done. We're going to take you up until 6. And this is 365 Sports. PettyClinicalOT.com. Dr. Kent Petty can help you become the high-performance man you want to be, used to be, and need to be. As you grow older, as a man, this is for men, as you get older, your testosterone level within your body can drop. And it, it just happens, like a lot of things. And so if you are not as energetic, if you're more lethargic, you're not sleeping well, you're not even eating well, and your ED or you have sex drive issues, Dr. Kent Petty, PettyClinicalOT.com can help you out. Contact him on the website, PettyClinicalOT.com. Tell him I sent you, and they can then help you get set up to get your blood work, get the results, and if your testosterone levels are lower than they should be or really low, he can give you the option of being in a program so you can become the high-performance man you want to be, need to be, used to be. Dr. Kent Petty at PettyClinicalOT.com.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people. good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
By the way, we will have Tim Brando. He was going to be scheduled for today. He had to move it to tomorrow. Tim Brando will join us as a part of what we do tomorrow, but when a lot of you respond to our guest with Tim Brando, Phil Bennett, you love the segments, you love the passion, and also the open book that they are with their opinions. And Phil Bennett joins us now on 365 Sports. Where do you want to start with him, Paul? You want to start with the college football playoff?
I'm gonna ask him this. Look, I watched a team he was coaching on win a bowl game handily without any quarterbacks on it, and my team is left out of the playoff when they're going to be on their second-string quarterback, and that's the reason given. Coach, how do you feel about one player being injured as the justification to keep an undefeated team out of the playoff?
The thing that bothers me about all of it, did you guys happen to hear Danny Cannell today?
No.
He made a profound statement, which is true. He said, let's call this what it is. He said, this is not a playoff. He said, this is an invitational to go to the playoff. And he says, you have to have an invitation to go to the playoff. And the rules have been changed almost weekly, when you have an injury. Now, Paul, I don't think there's any question that Florida State is not the team And I think you would agree with this without Travis. And so if the protocol is saying at the moment, who are the best 4 teams, if it has to be in that realm, not conference championship, not undefeated, but in the realm of who are the best 4 teams, I think they got it right. Now, I'm not sure that's the way it was written. And I think that there's a lot to what you just said. It would be like us. You're right. People don't realize it, but in 15, we lost the Sugar Bowl because we didn't have a quarterback. And it was hard. It was tough. And I feel for them. And I just don't think, the people realize the other thing they talked about, and it's true, and I want your opinion on this. Do you truly think that they were going to leave Alabama out of it and the SEC would get no representation into? I mean, they can say what they want to. Conferences don't matter. That's not true. And so let's say, my question is, let's say that Travis would have stayed healthy. They would have stayed on top. Who would have got screwed? Alabama or Texas?
Well, see, then
it wouldn't have been.
in that scenario, when taking away the excuse for Travis, right? So that one's out. So they can't really, say that because they've got, and Florida State's numbers would have backed up, with the offense and everything they had. Then they do to Texas what they did to you in 2014.
Right. And think about this. People have brought this up. And I'm not sure Cardell Jones was a third-string quarterback. Some people said he was, but they ended up, playing and winning the national championship with a third-string quarterback.
Yeah,
it's not fair, but as we all know, it's just there's too much room for error, and it's very unfortunate that a group of kids did an unbelievable job, had a great season, and a fan base that's rabid that just is not going to get to celebrate it.
Yeah, I think Alabama going and winning the title would be like the best bet for ESPN at this point. Be like, see, we got the right team, and that's what happened with Ohio State when they let them in there. But, Phil, from your point of view and knowing how college football is set up these days, if you had your preference, the committee came to you or the powers that be and said, how would you construct the postseason? How would you construct the postseason?
If you remember, the BCS computers was one of that deal. I would do more of a combination of that, and I would make it a point. End of the season, best teams. And obviously, Craig, you would have to go head-to-head means something. I don't care when it was. And you could go down, and I think that you're going to have the same issues with 12 as you had with 4 at some point. There's, 13, 14, 15 are going to feel they got left out for some reason. I just don't, my answer has always been what 1AA does. Let's truly have a playoff. It might take a little bit longer, but if you had a playoff, it truly would determine who the national championship is. And they've been doing it for years and years, and they're good at it.
One of the things about the way that they do that is that, yes, conference champions get in. There are some at large, but that will be the argument about who gets in or not. But at least you have multiple games that you have to play to get not just 2 games. And pretty soon we're going to see teams having to play maybe 3 or 4 or whatever it is, but multiple games that you have to kind of fight your way through that system or that bracket.
Well, think about high school in Texas. I think it's right, 15 or 16 games. So, I mean,
you have to win. You have to win 6 games to win a state championship after your season. Yeah,
after your season. So that's the challenge. The big knock of not doing this at the highest level, some people say, it's injuries. No, it's not. It's bowl ties. It's television. What bowls are you going to get left out? That's the big deal. And they would really have to work to get a plan together to say, all right, this playoff would be this bowl, that bowl. The minor bowls and ESPN's bowl package would be left out of it. So that's been the reason.
Yeah, the lobbyists are not going to let that happen. You're right.
No, they're not going to let it happen. Yeah. And as I said, let's just imagine what would have they have done Saturday night had Florida State had their quarterback and beat the stuffing out of Louisville with that defense and with their quarterback, and Alabama beating Georgia and Texas winning. What would they have done? Who would y'all say would have got left out?
Who do you go ahead, Paul and Craig?
I think Alabama would have got left out because I think under that scenario, that's the one scenario where they absolutely had no reason to allow Alabama in because of the head-to-head, because of FSU being fully complete. I think they just so happened to get the perfect outcome this weekend to be able to make the decision that they made. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, it was, here in Aggieland, I mean, they are beside themselves. That of course, they don't like Texas, and it's just, I mean, it is a stick in the eye for them.
Phil, I'm curious when you watch.
Phil, can you just tell Paul you love him a lot? It would help him a lot.
Paul, I'm telling you, I do feel for you.
Yeah.
Even after 14, after we beat Kansas State, who we knew was a good team, and we had lost one game to West Virginia, and regardless of what you say, we did beat TCU, and we beat them not only on the scoreboard, we beat them statistically everywhere you could beat them. And if you looked at that game statistically, it wasn't even close, other than the score. And with that said, we get left out, and Ohio State with a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
How far did they jump? 4 slots? Isn't that correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, you were 5 or 6. Ohio State was behind you, and TCU was 3, won by about 50, and dropped behind you.
Right.
Yeah.
I think TCU was ahead of us, though, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. They were like 3. I think you might have been 5 or whatever. They beat the hell out of somebody, and then they not only dropped out of the 4, they dropped behind you, and you didn't play that weekend, I don't think.
Yeah, and they had beat. I think they beat Iowa State bad.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
Yeah,
they didn't play, and you guys did, but yeah,
right.
It's. Okay, when you watch a game like Florida State and Louisville, I know everybody likes offensive football. From a defensive coordinator standpoint, some of that had to be like watching a rock concert to you, right?
There was 2 games that I really, really enjoyed. I thought Florida State's defense was outstanding, and I thought SMU's defense was outstanding. I mean, they were both, that saying defense wins championships. I mean, that's true. I always laugh. I tell people, as juggernaut as we were offensively at Baylor in 13, our TCU game back-to-back weekends, we won that championship by playing defense against TCU and Texas. I think we had scored, you can check this, we had 3 touchdowns, interceptions to beat TCU there. At halftime of the Texas game in that bad weather, I think we were ahead 6-3, and we played lights out defense. And that's what both of those teams did.
Coach, I know there's still a month until the actual playoff gets underway, but I'm sitting here and I think I'm picking Texas to win the whole dadgum thing. Not so much asking you for your pick, but what did you think of the Longhorns on Saturday against Oklahoma State in the Big 12 title game? And just what do you think of them as an all-around team heading into this 14 playoff?
As we've talked all year, Craig, I've sort of made my feelings known. I think Texas, once they got their quarterback back, I think through the Houston game and when they were starting the younger kids, I don't think they had their rhythm. And I thought their defense really showed up. I think what they've done defensively has been outstanding. Their D-line is really good. Their linebackers are good. And now that you've got their quarterback back, and, you know, they've lost their best running back. And their receivers are dangerous. I think they're a team that can really do some damage and potentially win this thing. You know, I will say this. They better get ready. That game, watching one of the defenses I didn't like watching last week was Oregon. Oregon wouldn't get out of man coverage, and Washington did a number on them with short motions to the boundary, picks, rubs, all those different things. I think Texas, you know, last year struggled with Washington in the
bowl game,
San Antonio Bowl and Alamo Bowl. So that could be a closer game than people really realize. And I think people also, you know, talk about Alabama always beating us. You know, I remember Alabama losing to Ohio State when Urban was there, losing to Clemson. So they're definitely beatable, but they are getting better and better. It's going to be interesting to see if Michigan can do the things that they've done all year on both sides of the ball to a team like Alabama.
Coach, you're good. You know him well. Mike Blesh, he was at UNT. He was at Tulsa, Houston, coached at Temple High School with Mike Spradlin, among others. And he now is the offensive coordinator, I believe, at Cal, replacing Jake Spavital. Your thoughts about Blesh, who was the offensive line coach there, and also today Jake Spavital was introduced at Baylor?
You know, I think that the first thing, I work with Mike, and I've told everybody that I've worked with, I knew that he had a future. He has all the it factors, smart, doesn't overthink things, great teacher, is a grinder, but yet realizes, does a great job with the players. I think Wilcox really made a good call. I think that Jake and him went into a tough situation and really did a bang up job. They were double trouble on offense, and they go in there and put a package together. I was fortunate enough to go watch them practice a couple of times this summer during camp, and I could tell that between them that they were building something better, and they were really did a good job. And I think both of them have benefit. You know, Jake got to come back to Texas, and of course, Bleshy gets to be the coordinator there, and I think they'll both do well.
What Spavital, he was talking about today, that you don't have to be perfect in the offense that he's going to run, where we saw high school teams in Texas 20 years ago with guys that you didn't think were like probably big enough or fast enough becoming just giants with the spread or the wide open, like throwing the fade down the sidelines. What does he mean by that? And is that going to be something that's easy to kind of get your personnel to fit it with what you have or don't have now?
I think what he means, if you watched Oklahoma this year, think about this. Who was their best receiver? It was number 12. I mean,
Drake Stoops.
Would you ever think that Drake Stoops would be the prime receiver at OU? I mean, honestly, that kid was a ball player, and because of spacing in what he does and the way they distribute the ball, I think that's what he's talking about. Now, don't get me wrong. He's going to have a guy that can stretch the field vertically also. But I think that's what, I'm not speaking for Jake, but I think that's what he means by distributing the ball and being able, like they did at Cal, to have a good run game, not just a stretch game. I mean, they have three things they do. They're going to run inside zone, outside zone, and what we call gap plays with pulls and counters. And I think that he will make it simple, but he will get the ball in the hands of the kids that can make the play.
Coach, how much experience or how much do you know Willie Fritz, and your thoughts on Houston going with him as their next head coach?
I think Willie's a really good coach. And you know, I talk many times about our 2012 season at Baylor. We played Willie Fritz was the head coach at Sam Houston, and they had a kid named Flanders. They were really good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And people, and I've always owned up to it. It was the week before that catastrophe in West Virginia, but we end up losing Mike Hicks. We lose all these different guys. I think 3 guys in the secondary. So I moved some guys around. I put Chase. I can't remember his last name at safety. I always tell Willie, I said, you led me to the worst game I've ever coached in and the lousiest job I ever did, because we were so afraid of, they were doing at the time, he was running triple option. And we played a bang-up game, but it was so physical. We lost those 3 guys, and the next week was our 73, whatever the score was with Harris and them at West Virginia. But I think he's awesome. I think he adjusts to the game. He doesn't do the option anymore, and he is a great special team guy, and I think he evaluates talent well.
Phil, I'm going to bring up one of the great games I know that didn't end the way you guys wanted, kind of like TCU 61-58 for Patterson, but the game with West Virginia, he was on that staff, I believe, with Dana, and he was asked
Spavital,
about that. Jake Spavital was on that game, and he was talking about he just like how if you would have been a defensive coach, you just couldn't get over that for quite some time. The next year, you guys crushed them at Waco. Do you still think about 70-63 very often?
You know, first of all, you got to own it. What happened, I told the kids, and I was honest with them. When we, in the secondary, when I saw how hot Gino was, and they had some players. I forget, Stedman somebody, and they had the little
Bailey.
Yeah. And they were
Tavon Austin. Yeah,
Tavon Austin, and they were hot, but I did a very poor job of not saying, hey, I quit pressuring because I didn't think we could cover, and it was a mistake. It was a fatal mistake. And you own it. It was a deal that, and then once it happened, we couldn't get out of it. And as I tell people, you know, as many years I've done it, if you've done it very long and you haven't had a game like that, you're a liar, because it's just part of the process. I didn't like it, but the thing I did like, you know, we had another game. We went 4 games there. I think Texas beat us, put 50 on us. We weren't very good, and we were trying to find out. By the end of the year, we had regrouped, and I told the staff this. I said, it's not on them. We've got to get them back right. And we had I think you can check this. I think we won 5 games in a row to go, and then won the bowl game against UCLA.
It was amazing. Yeah.
After that. And I tell people, I felt, me personally, that I grew more as a coach that year than any time in my career. Because you have a tendency to say, oh, man, it's his fault, this guy's fault, this fault. Hey, I was in charge. It was my fault. And I owned it. We reevaluated what we could do, how we could do it. We got those kids back. And I'm going to tell you what happened. The kids that played when the other kids were hurt gave us depth. They got better. We were able to do a couple of more packages. And at the end of the year, I think I told you in San Diego, we'll win the Big 12 next year. Did I not?
You did, and you beat the hell out of UCLA and also had the goal line stand against K-State and more. Phil, if you don't mind, I know that it's kind of an off week, Army-Navy coming up. Can you kind of, as dependent on the holidays, stay with us through the championship week?
Absolutely.
Can't wait.
Sure will.
People love to have your segment and listen to it. Thank you very much. Phil Bennett with us. We're going to have J.J. Joe join us almost immediately. His thoughts because of the transfer portal and also the hiring of Jake Spavital. That game, 70-63, was like one big, deep fade pattern after another.
Yeah.
Tavon, go ahead.
I wasn't around for that, but I still hear about it. And, Yeah, you had not only some really good players, but Bill Bedenbaugh was the offensive line coach for West Virginia. Dana was on that staff, obviously, and then Spavital. So, yeah, they had a pretty good thing going. Gino's obviously still kicking it around the league, and that'll lead me to my next question to ask Phil, if we have more time, is I'm going to finally ask him of what was it like when Patrick Mahomes ripped them a new one, and what was all their final regular season
16,
game at Baylor. But that was a crazy game, and we didn't know what Patrick Mahomes was about to turn into at that point in time. And we thought, like, this defense sucks. But now I want to ask him what he thinks all these years later.
You know what's funny is a friend of mine is a huge Chiefs fan, and when Mahomes got drafted, he's like, I'm not happy, but I'm like, I don't know, man. I just saw him.
No. and they had the perfect setup with Alex Smith there, and he was able to kind of just marinate for a little bit and look what he's been doing, although they got beat last night in Green Bay and they're 8-4. J.J. Joe, former Baylor quarterback, Baylor radio color analyst with us on 365 Sports. J.J. Jake Spavital, do you like the hire?
Hey, guys. I mean, long time no talk to, but I like it. I like the idea of bringing someone experienced that I think has the ability to use the skill that this state produces. I mean, I was on my stomp the whole year that we needed to figure out a way to get the ball in space to our speed, and we really struggled with that. Some of that was the line, but I like the hire, and of course, Smoak, the proof is always in the pudding, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's got to get out there and try to make sure he can show up our line and make sure that continues to improve, and then at the same time, figure out how to get these guys who can really run, the Monterey Baldwins, the Richard Reeses, the Jordan Neighbors, get those guys the ball in space, and let's see what happens.
JJ, you always have to morph your scheme to your talent. Sometimes you can be good enough to where you can just be like, this guy fits, let's go get him. But for Baylor, the wide zone was the right thing at the right time, and then it veered off somewhere towards the end of last year where they didn't have the guys to run it anymore, and then just kind of continued into it. How difficult is it to keep ahead of where you think you are and what guys you have on the roster when sometimes you might have now recruited or brought guys on that just don't fit what you wanted to do?
I always say that. Look, you can get, if you have the right players, you can get a scheme to work if it's a competent coach. And most of the coaches, I give them credit, are competent, right? I think I heard, on ESPN, the guy says, hey, look, this is about players over plays. And to me, the offensive coordinators I played for, and even the ones I've seen over time, they look at the skill and the talent they have, what kind of line they have, a lot of times that impacts it. And the best offensive coordinators will figure out how to scheme an offense around that. And that was the thing that frustrated me a little bit about this year. As good of an OC and great Coach Grimes, I really got frustrated saying, like, hey, man, I know what they're telling about analytics and the ability to run through contact and the best running backs for this team. I get all that. Trust me. I get it. Nothing against it. But my eyes told me that two of your fastest players with the ball in their hands that have had success here on campus was Richard Reese and Monterey Baldwin. And they've shown it in a game. For most coaches, you have to prove to them that you can't do it in a game before they take the ball out of your hands. And my frustration is it really felt like we took the ball out of their hands based on numbers. And so I just really believe that those coaches who had the most success, I think, we saw with Briles, and I know people hate to hear this, but I saw Briles lose 3 quarterbacks and basically win running the single wing. He saw the players he had. He said, this is the scheme that works. Let's go win with it. And he'd be the top 10, 12 team in a bowl game doing that. So those are the kind of coaches you have to have that are ready to adapt to the players they have, and then they go execute.
Right now, JJ, we've seen, I think it's like 50-ish guys let it be known that they're going to be coming back next year off this current Baylor roster. 3 guys that have basically said that they're gone. George Maye, the offensive lineman, Drake Dabney as well, and then Blake Shapen is in the portal. I guess we didn't really get to know much about Maye, but your thoughts on Shapen and that situation there, and also on Drake Dabney going to go play and finish up his college career elsewhere.
Dabney, I hate to see Dabney go. I really thought that
that that loss is a big one. Now we have Kelsey Johnson and you got Jake Short and you got other guys that are really good. So I think Baylor can weather the storm, especially with the new model they're going to. But I hate to lose Dabney. I love his ranginess, his ability to run after the ball, run after the catch. Blake is a big one. I mean, if you can get Blake to stay, I think you got to go all hands on deck on that. And I know people say, well, I think it's good. Hey, give him a chance. And I think really, if I think Blake likes the scheme. Now the question I think Blake probably wants to know, it's like free agency now, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, what other opportunities out there? Is there a place where I feel like they're a quarterback away from winning a championship as a conference and going to the playoff or something? I think he's looking at that. But I really hope Coach Spavital and Coach Aranda and the changes they make or whatever they do, they figure out how to keep Blake. So I was glad to see Monterey come back. I was glad to see Richard Reese come back. I was glad to see Jordan Neighbors come back. I was glad to see all the guys I've seen come back. And that means that, hey, look, at least we're working from a place where we don't have to, start from scratch. And that's big.
Yeah, and it seems like that NIL with GXG, JJ, they said we're on our way. But you see players now, I'm back, I'm coming back, turning it back, whatever,
right.
Staying home. And boy, I tell you what, if there was it would have been nice last year to even be more public, but it got public
right.
just in time, I think.
Hey, Smoak, you're right, man. Hey, look, even I think I wrote an article about a few weeks ago that said this is the new landscape. And look, man, I'm not a rich guy myself. I mean, I'm a working guy, and I went to GXG and just said, I'm just going to send $50, right? And then I'm going to set up where I'm a recurring because I said, look, I like Baylor, and I like Baylor when they're good. And I know $50 may not do a big deal, but my understanding is that the way this works is you got to have the big money guys, Smoak, give money, of course. But those big money guys give money for everything. It's got to be the masses of all of us Baylor fans saying, hey, I can carve out of my budget something.
Absolutely.
For some people, it may be $1,000, it may be $50 to try to give the program so we can figure out how to navigate this new era.
That's exactly what we learned last week with Jeremy Fudge, or a week or so ago, that those who do $50 a month or $10 a month or $100 a year, that's where a lot of the money that has not been collected, even though people may think it's the opposite. JJ Joe with us, Baylor Radio color analyst on 365 Sports.
JJ, Sawyer Robertson is the quarterback of the now, depending on what they do in the portal, and Blake Shapen. He came out of a Leach system. Do you think that that's a benefit of him with Jake Spavital?
I think so. I mean, it's Sawyer. The only thing for me, and I think it's Sawyer, we saw when he had his feet available to him, he looked much, much better, I think, in that last game we saw him play than he did when he was hurt. I think he'll really do well in this system. But I think like anything, like when you're coming off a year like we've come off, it's not that I have anything against Sawyer by wanting Blake back. It's like, man, it's like anything. When you're trying to figure out how to bounce, maybe you get some transfers in. I want to have that experienced quarterback as a trigger man with 2 years under his belt. Whereas, Sawyer, this would really be his sixth start or something like that, a fourth start if he started the season as a starter. But I really think from where he came from in high school, this probably fits him well. And, of course, having a guy who's kind of a dual threat, because that's what he is, that also helps you a little bit, kind of maybe get some of that chunk yardage that I know it's attractive for everybody.
Do you feel, JJ, now with what you've seen at least, and there's a long way to go, more comfortable with where Baylor is, even though there's a hell of a lot of work to be done?
Yeah, I would say the direction, and they needed to. I mean, I think Mac knew this. Mac Rhodes knew it. Coach Aranda knew it. Not only did they need to make changes, they had to go sell it. I mean, when you win the Big 12 championship 2 years ago and you go to another one the 2 years prior and you won 2 championships the year before that when Browse were here, you can't be messing around, man. This is big time. You got to get your butt out there and you got to get out there and you got to sell what you're doing and people have to believe in it. I like the direction they're going. I really like the ability to bring Spavital in to hopefully leverage some of this talent. But the big thing to me, the big work is coming. And I think the big work, Smoak, you asked me, is this is where we are. And this used to happen when I was in school. They're going to have to sit down with players, and some players won't be back. And they got to be willing and big boy enough to say to them, hey, look, we're going to help you go somewhere, but we think we have to move in a different direction. And nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to talk about that. But that used to happen when I was in school. It has to happen now because Baylor is trying to play big boy football and be a big boy athletics. And if that's the case, then you got to have those conversations. Then you got to go out and get some people who hopefully help you get better. Deion said it a different way. He's bringing his own luggage and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying we're like that. That's not what Baylor is. But where we are is that, we want Baylor to be good. And for Baylor to be good, you have to make tough decisions, have tough conversations. And that's what Coach Aranda and Coach Mack Rhodes are.
JJ, thank you very much. We are not done. We'll see how they fill the roster up over the next few weeks and be in touch. JJ Joe with us, thanks to Alliance Bank the last several weeks throughout the season, and also now with the new offensive coordinator in place. Speaking of successful, SMU, they won the American Conference. They're headed to the ACC. Rett Lashley, SMU football coach, is next on 365 Sports. Right now, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco with the wild game processing essentials. If that's what you do, if you hunt and you then want to process what you kill, you have pork sausage seasoning, smoked sausage seasoning, summer and smoked Polish sausage seasoning, jerky seasoning, Cajun jerky seasonings, 10-ounce cure at $6.25 to $25 a bag, or 25 cents a bag, depending on what you get. Also, ground beef talo. Also, pork trim, 50-50, pork picnic, Hank's, mahogany summer sausage casings, snack casings, dried jalapenos, a pound of that a bag, and also a pound of wild game bag. All of what you need. Wild game processing essentials. Waco Custom Marketplace on Lake Air Drive in Waco.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
We're back with SMU football coach Rett Lashley on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul, and I'm David Smoak. They won the American Conference, and what a year it's been for the Mustangs, and really in a lot of different ways. Rett, thank you for your time. Congratulations. You had your banquet last night. How much fun and also like being able to soak and embrace everything you've accomplished did you get that done last night?
Oh, man, we're all still pretty tired. I mean, it's the crazy thing. It was just 48 hours ago, I guess, that we won it. But, man, we had a great time last night celebrating this team, celebrating our seniors, and just celebrating a championship that our guys, really went out and just earned. And I just can't say enough about this team. It's been so fun to coach them. They've been dominant most weeks, and they've just gotten better and better each week. And it was just really cool on Saturday in New Orleans to win and celebrate that with our fan base.
You guys just went out and beat a Tulane team that is very well coached, that is always, one of the most fundamentally sound teams in the country, and had to do it with a backup quarterback. What is it like when because you have to send that message to your team to not stress them out about, look, everybody's got to step up this week and play well, and then they respond to it and don't get crushed by the weight of the moment.
It's really fun because it just confirms, this late in the year, you kind of know who your team is, whatever direction that goes. And I had so much confidence in our team and who we were, even after Preston went down. And we also had a lot of confidence in knowing who Kevin was. But, I didn't have to come in and go, hey, defense, y'all got to play extra well. And, hey, you guys got to pick him up. And really all I told the team last Monday is we kind of turned the page and started getting ready for Tulane. And I just said, we're going to win this game because we have the better team. And we're going to win this game because of our team. And no one has to do anything different. Our defense has been great all year. You guys don't have to do anything different. Offense, you don't have to do anything different. Hey, Kevin, you don't have to win this game. You just got to go be Kevin. And our team will take care of the rest. And I had a lot of confidence in that. And so to go out and do it, again, your point, Tulane, incredibly good team. Willie's always had a really well coached team, great defense, player of the year at quarterback. But, if I'm being honest, the game wasn't near as close as the score was. We played really, really well.
Coach, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but there is, the conversation about the decisions made this weekend, and a lot of the attention obviously being put on the CFP 4. But the second most, I guess, controversial argument is about the New Year's 6 spot that ended up going to Liberty as opposed to you guys. A lot of people feel like that should have been the SMU Mustangs going to a New Year's 6 bowl game. Did that add anything bittersweet to what was a fantastic weekend, and how did you sort of handle whatever level of disappointment that might have been?
I would say any other time, it would have been really bittersweet and disappointing. And, look, guys were probably disappointed for a minute. I was disappointed for a minute. Wasn't shocked, just over the way the last few weeks have gone on those committee roundups on Tuesday night. It didn't shock me. Look, Liberty's a good football team, but I think because of what we had just accomplished the night before, there really wasn't going to be anything to steal our joy. And we were going to celebrate this team and what we did. Look, there's things you can't control, and there's human error in life. I think just about everybody outside of people in Lynchburg, Virginia, have been pretty outspoken that they think it was a mistake, and I don't even think it was close. And that's not to disrespect them. It's just the numbers, the data, the evidence, everything tells you, and the way they handled the top 5 tells you. It was not really that complicated, the decision. The AP poll got it right. The coaches poll got it right. But here's the deal. There's 133 teams in the country, and there's only one team at the end of the year that doesn't have something that didn't go exactly how they wanted to. And we're 11-2. We've had a fantastic year. We went 9-0 in our league. And, nobody can take the championship away from this team. And that was our number one goal. That was our goal to start the season. So, it doesn't, everybody thinks I'm biased because I am, and it's not going to matter what I say. I know we're the only one that was in that discussion who went on the road and played 2 top 25 teams, and we beat one of them, and we played the other one, the Oklahoma Sooners, in a really good football game, and the other team didn't even play one. All the data, it is what it is. What we have the opportunity to do now is go win our 12th game, which would be tied for the most in school history. It'd be only the second time we've ever won 12 games at SMU. We can win a bowl game, which is a big deal, and we get to play an ACC opponent, which as soon as that game ends is now a conference opponent, and it could give us great momentum launching into that league next year. So our guys, they were bummed for about 3 minutes, and we started our team meeting, and we said we're going to celebrate this team, and we haven't looked back.
You brought up the ACC. That was my next question about the momentum. How much, since the decision, you're going to join them, and now you have what you have as far as evidence. Can you try to describe the momentum that is even higher than the day you were accepted into the ACC?
You really just couldn't have drawn it up much better. From our football facility that's being built that we'll move into this summer in July, that's state of the art, just as good as you're going to find literally in the country. To getting accepted into the ACC, the day before the first game this year, to then winning a conference championship, first time outright since 1982, first time of any kind since 84. And just so many things that we've done this year that it's just all coming together at the same time, the recruiting momentum and being in Dallas and just the way that everything's going. We just couldn't have asked for it to be any better all at the same time.
I saw your interview after the game the other night to Coach, and when you said what people have been waiting for 40 years, I think that there's only like select groups of sports fans that can say, like, it's like the Rangers not winning the World Series, the whole, width of their existence until this year, or, how long it took the Cubs or whatever it is. Like, that had to be amazing to be on the receiving end of breaking that for a fan base that has just been waiting for a very long time.
Yeah, it was so gratifying, one, for our kids, the team, just because we know what they put in to be a team. And two, the expectations that we put on ourselves, but really we're on this team. For your point, from not doing something in 40 years, the expectations for us to do it this year were really, really high. And so it always feels good to deliver. But most importantly, like you said, in SMU, we have a history. We have a history of championships. We had 11 Southwest Conference championships and 3 some version of shared or whatever national titles and Doak Walker and all the things. Like, there's a history there. It's not like we've never done it. 40 years. There was so many people crying, just tears of joy. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of SMU fans and that have lived the majority of that 40 years too, And so they were there when Eric was playing and we won it in 82. They were there when the death penalty happened, and they've been there for that whole long road back. So just to be able to deliver that and to come through for our fan base and for our program and for our president, Dr. Gerald Turner, was just really cool.
Coach, I know that Paul asked you about Kevin Jennings and the job that he did stepping in, but I was curious, how's Preston Stone doing with the injury and just obviously not a way that he wanted to end what has been a fantastic season for that young man. How's he handled all the negative news and the pain and all that comes with that?
He's handled it like a champ, like you would think. He was obviously super disappointed. We lost him. He was probably a drive or two from coming out of the game against Navy because it was almost totally over, and just, broke his upper ankle, lower leg area, and super disappointed. But to your point, he had a great season, and he did what we thought. He got better and better each week. His last 2 halves of football were the best. The second half at Memphis, the first half against Navy, he was just as good as anybody in our state, in our league, and one of the best in the country, the way he was playing. He had surgery that Tuesday, Monday maybe, right after. Successful. Everything's good. He'll make 100% recovery. Probably back sometime middle of spring ball to do some throwing and be full go by the summer. And he handled it great. He was there. He had to go to that game. He was there with, supporting his teammates and Kevin and celebrating with him after. And so, that's the cool part, though. It just validated who we are as a team. Preston got us there. Kevin helped us get us over the finish line. And like I said, after the game, winning a conference title with your backup quarterback, if that doesn't scream team, I don't really know what else does.
In the future, we're now moving from 4 teams, and what we saw is somewhat, in a way, chaos, controversy, whatever the words are yesterday. What are your thoughts, Redd, about it moving to 12? Does that give everybody more of a chance? Are we going to then complain about those who were 10, 11, 12 and not 13, 14, and 15, but just getting more into a true playoff rather than what appears to be, as some have said, an invitation?
Yes, I love it. It's been the best thing that's been coming. I'm glad it's happening, not just for teams like us, but for everybody. To your point, look, they're always going to gripe about next year. It's going to be, Oklahoma would have been left out this year as the number 12 because, or who's 11, who's 10, who's 13, 14. That's fine, and I think it should even go to 16 one day. It wouldn't even add a week to the whole deal. But I think the more the better. Football's different than basketball, so going more than 16 is probably a lot. But you look at the NCAA tournament now, they gripe about the teams on the bubble. They don't gripe about the 1, 2, 3, and 4 seeds. And so, there's always going to be that. Shoot, half of that's what helps you guys and makes the generates the excitement about our sport. But I think it's going to be great. I think just like this year, there was probably 7 to 8 teams deserving, and talk about a hard decision to make. it won't be as hard in the future. And I think it's going to be really exciting, having on-campus games and then having those neutral sites after that. I think it's going to be great.
Dealing with what you dealt with Preston Stone, does that give you even a little bit more of a personal, like, oh, man, when it came to Florida State and Jordan Travis and how all of that played into things? Because as you said just a few moments ago, like, it showed you as a team who you were, not just that it revolved around one guy.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, now that might have been the only thing the committee did that was consistent. The two teams that had the quarterback get hurt were the two teams that got the short end of the stick. I think the difference was we went out and looked pretty good with Kevin. And, arguably maybe had our best win of the season with him. But, it's tough, and I get it. Injuries are part of the game, and, there's that whole debate on most deserving, best, all that stuff. But, yeah, it's pretty, like I said, it's just really cool to see how we were able to get it done, and we're just going to continue to celebrate that.
What is more of a handful, getting ready for Tulane last week or getting ready for a bowl game or transfer portal, NIL, et cetera, or handling two different sets of twins?
Yes.
All of the above.
Now I would say the transfer portal and recruiting and NIL and bowl game and all that, but because the boys are 13 and the girls are 7, and it's chaos, but it's a little bit more chaos where they can all be self-sufficient. But when the girls were born and the boys were 5, that one definitely would have been number 1.
Oh, man.
I can imagine.
Now, I have a friend who has your exact same situation of 2 sets of twins, and it's different because they work together in a way that normal siblings don't.
Oh, they're evil. It's like for 9 months in their mom's womb, they started figuring out how they're going to plot together to make mom and dad's life miserable. Con them and trick them into everything. And the boys are one way, but you know how we are as guys. We're not as smart as we think we are. But those girls, they know what they're doing now. I mean, they are 7 and they are world class, and they get a yes out of me every single time.
They're organized and they're scary.
Yeah. They are very. I'm not going to say manipulative, but we could.
But you're going to say it.
Yeah. Hey, Rett, congratulations! 7-6 last year. Really nice ending, and of course even better this year. The ACC and more. Congratulations! Have you ever been to Fenway Park?
This is cool. Yes, I have. I've seen a few baseball games there, believe it or not. But I actually coached in the first ever football game at Fenway in 2017. When I was at UConn, we played Boston College. So I actually coached a game there. They haven't had very many. And so it was wild.
Thank you very much for your time. Rett Lashley, SMU football coach. They're headed to the Fenway Bowl against Boston College. That game will be on December 28th. That's an early game at 10 o'clock Central Time to kick off at Fenway Park.
It's not often you get to play football in a cathedral.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yankee Stadium's hosted a game or two, and now Fenway Park, of course. Wrigley Field, I think, even got involved once. What a nice run for SMU, and they overcame the loss of Preston Stone, and they were really good and still are good as they've ended the season with the American Conference Championship.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations to the Mustangs, and it's great timing. I didn't ask my questions. I kind of butchered the question about the quarterback. I was trying to ask if he had more sympathy for Florida State, given their predicament at quarterback. But I don't know if it came across that way.
It is a good point that they did, like, the quarterback thing kept them both, But again, the just keep winning thing.
That's a lie. It's a lie. I mean, the whole mask got ripped off over the weekend. It did, on the whole sham of the regular season's importance and head to head and various other things like that we deemed of certain levels of importance and how they matter. And really, we just got told by the committee that we're going to pick who we want. And yeah, there's loose things to follow. Like, just not some Joe Blow can walk in and be in the 4-team playoff. You have to only have the one loss or whatever. But they're ultimately just going to do what they want to do. That's the message. And why we allow, or why we, I guess, accept, and I know there's not really anything we can do to change it other than just not watch, but to have all of that happen, with enough people to matter is not likely. But why we just accept that this is the best way to crown a champion is to have a bunch of people in a room telling us, based on whatever criteria they so choose at any given moment, it's never the same. To everybody's point today, it's never the same. It's what it needs to be that given Saturday or Sunday that they're deciding, which can be different the following Saturday or Sunday when they're deciding. They just make it up as they go along. Yeah. And we just take that. That's how the champions decided. I think that is so ridiculous. And college football is always going to be unique because before that it was polls. So it was still people deciding. And so that's why, for all of the warts that it still may have, yes, give me a 12-team playoff. Absolutely deliver it to me right now over the alternatives that we have where it's just people picking who they want to see based on whatever arbitrary reasoning they have on any given Sunday when they have to make the decision known. I just think it's such a stupid way to crown a winner. And you know what? Alabama might go win the whole dadgum thing, and then people will say, see, they got it right. No, I don't think that meant that they necessarily got it right because Florida State still deserved a chance. So I know we're going to run in circles about that whole conversation, but I'm just glad that it's changing, and I don't think it can come soon enough because I think the 4-team is just it had its proper ending, and it can go off and die and shrivel up elsewhere.
Like every flaw that it ever had, was played. Like Florida State got like the confluence of every excuse that was
timing's everything.
Like landed on them too. But I just like going back in the history of it. I remember when they said 4, and then you think like immediately, okay, well at least we got something, and then you think like, well, aren't there 5 conferences? Like, there's not going to be every year where this is going to be a problem, but there's going to be multiple years where you're going to have somebody from one of those conferences that's apparently on equal footing, that
they're lucky as hell that it didn't happen 5 or 8, 9 years ago, although it did happen 10 years ago.
It's happened enough to where it's not, with 4 teams, you're not giving yourself room for a lot of possibility. And I wish one thing. When Reese Davis asked Boo Corrigan why Alabama over Florida State, he would have just said, because Supreme Leader Sankey told me to.
All right.
And that's all that it is.
How much should Gene Smith, Jim Phillips, and George Kliavkoff take for the alliance? No, it wasn't Gene Smith. It was who's the guy that moved on? Warren.
Yeah, David
for the
Warren.
alliance that delayed going from 4 to a better number earlier than we're going to get it next year.
I mean, yeah,
the
they
ACC
should.
in itself was part of that dumb alliance. It came back to bite them in the ass.
Yeah, they should. And look, Florida State bears a little bit of blame in this too, in that if the ACC is seen as weak, right? If it's seen as weaker, what did Florida State spend August doing?
Talking about how they
needed to be in a better conference. So I understand that that's probably, now that's not the major reason for it, but the way things work when things are out in the ether, so to speak, and Greg Sankey knows this better than anybody. The more that you hammer home, because he approached it like a political campaign. We don't do elections how we probably should when you should, like, if you see a debate, you should see somebody's legislative batting average up there. Like, oh, this guy's hitting 390 and getting bills passed. This guy's 210. Well, I'm voting for the 390, not the 210 guy, like on the promises. Well, we don't have that. So what Greg Sankey will go, like when you vote in an election, you ask a lot of people like, hey, why are you voting for candidate X? Well, because they care about the American people. And you're like, I know you've seen his commercials.
Yeah.
Like, but why specifically?
Paul, you know why Greg Sankey was given that ability.
But why, so that's what he was doing was because because the SEC says the SEC, it just means more, it just means more, it just means more. And then those guys get in the room and go, well, the SEC means more.
Yeah, dude, the propaganda has been at work for 20 years. And like I've said with the SEC, it'd be all moot point if they hadn't gone and won all the titles they did. But like, man, it's so geared towards them. It's just stupid. Like, it's kind of just dumb, like how much the knee is bent for them at this point. Like, I get it, man. They're the best conference. Like, nobody's arguing that point, although I don't think they were the best conference this year.
Nope. In fact,
I don't think they were the best conference this year.
Against them.
But it's like, it doesn't matter because we're just told, no, they're the best.
Yep.
Well, what if they're not? Well, no, they are.
It was like...
And it just gets drowned out in the brain-dead fans who just repeat whatever Feinbaum told them to say, and the talking heads across ESPN cannot be trusted whatsoever, nor can really, many people involved now as deep as the networks are into this whole thing. But like, it's just like, they're great. They don't need any help. But like, then when you go and you give them every benefit of the doubt and help them in a situation where, I don't know, I just feel like, why is it so geared towards them? Because I guess that's where the money comes from. But damn, man, at the expense of what?
Yeah, and they want a bunch of national champions.
Right, I get that, but that doesn't give you carte blanche for just the rest of history to always claim you're the best.
Here's an example.
Yeah,
the NFC East this year and the last numerous years, for like the last 20 years or so, has been one or two teams are pretty good, and Washington and the Giants or whoever, there's always been two teams. They're trash. For the most part, the Cowboys and the Eagles will not lose another division game. Maybe it's been that way used to be if you won the NFC East, you won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that's still the case now because it damn sure is not.
Yeah.
So it's the evidence can change. And if you give it enough chances to be a part of a one-game championship or a two-game championship, the odds are better that you're going to probably end up winning it. Somebody else needs to go out and beat them. Now you need Michigan to beat. And listen, I do not want to forget about saying Nick Saban may have just had his best coaching job ever.
Yeah, I mean, we all saw that on Saturday night, and I can't be the only one that thought, wow, remember when all those people were talking about in the first month of the season how he was getting ready to retire? And I made fun of it at the time. I was like, oh, let's do this again. We do this every year. Anytime there's a stumbling block, oh, Saban must be getting ready to go out. Everybody circles the wagons. It's the end. The end is coming. Alabama's done. Dynasty over, and here they are. And guess what? They're probably like the second, third favorite to win the national title, and very well could. And that would only reinforce the whole SEC stereotype. But I just I'll declare them the best, even though, again, this year they're not top to bottom. They're not. The Pac-12 was. But they might have the best team. They might have the best couple teams. They might have the best, three teams. But this whole thing where it's like their seventh-place team is better than everybody's number 2 or conference titles, and just the way it's portrayed, it's just stupid. It's nauseating. It's just kind of dumb at this point.
And if you try to overshadow that, or you try to shout out loud enough, you just get
drowned out by Teddy from Tuscaloosa and a million other people.
As you know, guys, I'm not that.
This is not Alabama's fault.
No. I'm not that active on Twitter anymore, or X or whatever. I'm not calling it X. It's Twitter. But I last year after the TCU game said, look, this is not, everybody's going to say this is about the SEC versus the Big 12. No, this is about Georgia versus TCU. And, Alabama, they're in this discussion, but, where you were getting, lost in the shuffle here is that, Kentucky is not better than Iowa State. Kentucky and Iowa State are the same, right? For the most part. So does not, everybody's not better because of...
I know
year in, year out history.
The top of their conference has
been really good.
And by the way, if Texas would have done this maybe once or twice more in the last 10 years, maybe the Big 12 never does blow up.
Exactly.
Or Oklahoma.
But there are, there's all, and people came at me oh, it's just better. It means more. Yes, I know that you were told it means more. And you're telling me it means more. But I'm just saying that the way that college football is going, it doesn't anymore. And you've got to stop doing that, because it does not matter that a bunch of SEC teams have won the national championship in the past. It only matters what happens in 2023.
Georgia deserves to get in the playoff because they've won 2 years prior to this. They're undefeated. They just wait a second. Now all the past 2 seasons matter, and this year's best 4 teams. Let's start to see that argument. It's whatever's convenient, and it's not even you're not a good or you're overrated thing. It's just kind of silly, the whole talking point
accepted.
At this.
It's accepted by most,
And it's just you disagree with it. Oh, well, you don't get it because you root. No, I watch the same games you do. But it's so overkill at this point. And social media, I think, like anything else, only makes it worse, because then you come across the folks who really have no brain cells to be able to even think outside of the fact that the SEC might not be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And it's annoying as much as anything else, I think.
I think so. So you know what? Michigan, Washington, Texas, you're on the clock. But Alabama, I tell you what Nick Saban's done since that game against Texas is remarkable. And it wasn't easy. They had to beat Auburn on a 4th and goal from the 32, for God's sakes, who had just lost to New Mexico State. But they did. They won that game, and then they, of course, took down 7-0 to Georgia, then turned the screws and got that done. When we come back, we'll hear from Cedric Golden, covers UT for the Austin American-Statesman, and Paul's Top 5 around the corner.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, the official place of drowning Paul's sorrows. I had some whiskey the other night, and celebration that I got from Riverbend Liquor and Wine, and then that whiskey will now be used because I'm sad. No, it's not a good reason to do that, but no, it's Riverbend Liquor and Wine is a great, great place. And when it comes to whiskey, of which I am a huge fan, anybody who knows me knows that. I'm a connoisseur of sorts of fine craft bourbons. And if you want those local craft bourbons, the one that are made right here in the Lone Star State, the best selection is at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Whether it is Balcones, Garrison Brothers, Devil's River, they've got them all at Riverbend Liquor and Wine. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank, and their new location on Franklin Avenue.
Don't miss the Wrap Up the Year sales event at Allen Samuels in Waco. As the year comes to a close, we're offering unbeatable deals and a wide selection of new 2023 Jeep models like the Grand Cherokee, Grand Cherokee L, Renegade, Gladiator, Wrangler, and the Wrangler 4XE. In addition to incredible savings, we're also offering generous trade-in values for your current vehicle. Upgrade to a newer model while getting the most out of your trade-in. Hurry in, these deals won't last long. Shop our great selection of new inventory and start the new year in style.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Looking to connect with Baylor alums in your area? Baylor Alumni can help. Looking to host a watch party in your city? Baylor Alumni can get you started. Want to step out in your community and serve with other alums? Baylor Alumni is your connection with the university and each other. Let's get started. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
This is 365 Sports. Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com. I'm David Smoak. And how about the success of your auction? So good, right? With all of your great product, your aged Wagyu and more, that you're going to do something similar at the early part of December.
Yeah, so we had such a good auction that we feel like we found a different way to sell our beef. So on December 1st, we're going to do a silent auction, and it's going to be all online at cci.live. And it's going to last from December 1st to December 3rd. And we're calling it the Silent Night Auction with 12 different lots for the 12 days of Christmas. We'll have all of the information online at TexasBeefHouse.com.
TexasBeefHouse.com. Again, this is aged Wagyu beef and so much more. And this, Samantha, is going to be for the steaks. Is that correct?
Yes. It'll all be for different packages that are full of steak, skirt steak, flap steak, flat iron. It's going to be a variety. That way it's kind of like a Christmas package. All of our hamburger and sausage are still available online. And you can use gift cards, not only online, but you'll also be able to use them for the auction.
So once again, TexasBeefHouse.com. Such an incredible auction that he experienced. And now, again, Samantha, starts December 1st for 3 days. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we can't wait for y'all to see how this one's going to go.
I can't wait. The steaks are amazing. They are delicious, mouth-watering delicious. TexasBeefHouse.com. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu from our pasture to your plate. TexasBeefHouse.com.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Cedric Golden, Austin American Statesman, columnist, joins us 365 Sports. Cedric, we've heard about what kind of a run, the journey of this UT football team, how it slowly but surely with Steve Sarkisian fixed and worked on the culture. and us against the world, embrace the hate and all of that. They don't always live up to that. This team seems to have a lot of grit to it. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, Smokey, they've overcome some obstacles. There are games that they are involved in that they probably should have worked the opponent. I mean, you're tied with Houston in Houston. They turn out to be a bad team. It's 10-10 at the end of the third quarter against Wyoming. So those kind of things could have conspired against them, but they figured out a way to win those games and make that record hold up. They are what they call a revenge tour. They check some boxes. They check the Alabama box. They check the Iowa State box. They check the Texas Tech box. And here they are on the cusp of making some real history. They already have, but much bigger history if they can win a couple of more games.
Well, the Washington box would be another one too, right? Because of the bowl game. So Quinn Ewers, everybody knows how talented he is, but Cedric, I mean, and this is just me, I'm not watching them as closely every week as you are, but I always felt he was kind of like right there, and just waiting for that moment. Have we seen his moments in the last couple weeks where he is now maybe broken through and he is exactly what they thought he was going to be?
Paul sure feels like it. It feels like it. He's done what's been asked of him. He morphed from a game manager to a game changer in the last 2 weeks. And when you look at his performances over the first couple of seasons, they've been uneven. I mean, 19 of 45, you talk about checking off the Oklahoma State box. He was 19 of 45 in Stillwater with 3 picks. He's his worst game of his career. And then he comes back and he lights it up and just feels like he's approaching the next level in his maturation as a quarterback. He's still only 20 years old, and his best games are probably ahead of him. So better shape than he was last year, playing at about 195 to 200, getting around a lot better, overcame yet another injury, and he's playing his best ball at the perfect time of the season. So, yeah, I think he's starting to realize that he can be very good at this football thing.
Cedric, just on Saturday, what was the pageantry and just the feel like? I mean, given the game itself, UT was pretty much in control throughout, but, just this long-awaited road to the end of the Big 12, going out on top, all that came with that, your mark, the fans. Just what was that scene like? How would you describe it on Saturday?
Man, it went from a nice coronation at the beginning into a WWE WrestleMania. Your mark was Dom Mysterio, and I don't know if you guys watch WWE, but there's a guy that every time he touches the mic, you can't even hear him because they're booing so hard. Mm-hmm. And we were in the press box; we couldn't even hear Your mark. And I would have loved it for it to have been Texas and OU. That would have been even funnier. But I'm telling you, man, it was a great coronation for the Horns, and let's just keep it real because we keep it real here on this show. They better get it now because those opportunities may not be coming in the near future. I mean, they're going to be having to deal with Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and Brian Kelly and those guys. We don't expect Florida to be mediocre for long, and you always got Aggie nipping at your heels. So I think this is the best time for them to get it while the getting is good. Washington is tremendous, tough matchup. Michael Penix last year in the Alamo Bowl threw for 280 and a couple of touchdowns. If I told Sarkisian that he was going to throw for 280 and a couple of touchdowns this year, Sark might take that because Penix is on another level now. I mean, he's throwing for 350, 400. He's that guy with Polk and Adunse and wideout. So I think this is a prime opportunity, not only to win the Sugar Bowl, but to win a national championship. And I don't know if, I know Michigan is badass and so is Alabama, but I give Texas, if they can get by Washington, I give Texas an excellent chance to win a national championship.
Moving into the SEC, there was a thought that Oklahoma and Texas probably would struggle. I never thought that they would struggle. It wouldn't be like really easy, but this year things have fallen well for them. And of course, they, as you said, survived. I think the K-State game in overtime, Kansas State's at about the 3, 5, 7 yard line. And I mean, my God, if they score right there, then UT's hopes are over. They could still win the Big 12 title. This seems like everything is peaking at just the right moment, not only for this year, though, Cedric, but honestly with what they have coming up next, too. I mean, the schedule might be tougher depending on what you think, but it could not have clicked at a better time.
It couldn't have clicked at a better time, and they got the benefit of the doubt with the selection committee. They went over Alabama. It was momentous. That was the one that carried them through, and no matter what the the naysayers say, the Longhorns went in there against a team that was 52-1 at the house and handed it to them by 10 points. And I know Georgia thinks that they're one of the 4 best teams in the country. I'm not going to dispute that, but remove all doubt. Don't leave it in the hands of the judges. Land a knockout, and then you win. So this thing is falling right for Texas. Texas made their own break. I was one of those that thought maybe if they didn't get in, they were never going to get over the day they let that OU lead get away because it cost them. But they survived that, and now they have a chance to win a national championship. And Sarkisian's done one hell of a job. He got 13-12 entering this season at Texas. That's not those aren't world-beating numbers. But he's got his culture established. It's a player-led locker room. He is an open book. He's thankful for a second chance at a gig like this, and I think that they are making the most of it. This defense is the bellwether of this team. T'Vondre Sweat is the best player on the team. He's the best defensive tackle in all of football. Where he goes, the Longhorns follow. And if they can get Michael Penix off his spot and speed up that little clock in his head, I think they can win this game.
Well, I think after we saw T'Vondre Sweat, catch a pass, like that's got to be in the system all the way through. I mean, I wouldn't want to cover him.
He's a beast, and he's one of those guys that 6'5", 365 pounds, and he's got a never-ending motor. He's one of those guys that's just unblockable. Sarkisian says they've done very few holding calls against him and Murphy, but I just think that he's the one guy that's made it all go on that defense, and they can be had on the back end. They've been burned a couple of times in that secondary by quarterbacks who aren't nearly as good as Michael Penix Jr. So it's up to that front seven to get home, and if they can get home, that makes it easier on the rest of the guys.
Cedric, I came across a clip of the post game there, and you mentioned Dom Mysterio showing your wrestling knowledge there and the heat that he gets. But what did you think of The Undertaker, who I know is a diehard Texas fan, giving Quinn Ewers a championship belt for MVP at the end of the game?
Man, all I was missing was rest in peace.
Yeah, right.
Where's the pallbearer when you need it, you know? And so I was like, man, it was a WWE party, guys. They had the Undertaker there. Drew McIntyre was there. The announcer, Samantha Irwin, was there. She's married to Ricochet. So they had it all going, and man, what a moment. I don't even know if these kids watch WWE, but as someone who tapes it every week, there's like 5 hours of wrestling, and I tape them both, and it takes me like an hour to watch them both because I fast forward through the stuff I don't like. But yeah, for me, I thought that was cool. And, Undertaker's a long time Austin resident, and he's a big time celebrity along with Mark Henry in the 5-1-2. But that was a nice little touch to see Quinn get the championship belt. Hopefully it's not the last belt they get.
All right, so this is the end of the year 3 for Sarkisian. We all know it didn't start well, and last year was kind of disappointing. Now this year has been a great run with still more to get done. Will they outbid themselves and renew his deal? Will they up him? How will they handle taking care of Sarkisian because of the success?
David, they got to be smart, man. You don't want to go down the same road that Ross Bork went down with Jimbo Fisher when you're just adding years. Man, just fatten up his salary, take him to $8 or $9 million a year, maybe 1 or 2 more years, maybe 3 at the most. Don't extend him to 20, 35 because then What happens? He gets in the SEC and then he puts up 3 or 4 clunkers, and then they start whispering about him, because that kind of thing can happen. Give these guys the money on the front end, and don't load up years and then attach yourself to someone that just might not need to be attached to. So for me, I would say give him a big fat raise, but don't keep him around for 20 years, because a lot of marriages don't make it that far.
Thank you, Cedric. Appreciate your time. Great to have you on. Enjoy the next few weeks of you covering Texas in the semifinals with Washington and maybe either Michigan in a rematch with Alabama. I agree with him on that. I just was curious because a lot of times they'll throw something out silly, but I like what Cedric had to say.
Well, and they just got an example from their arch rival of what not to do, so I think that they'd be stupid as all get out to sit there and try to mimic that or follow that. And where's Sark going to go?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
like,
why, no, okay. I'm not interrupting you. That's why I said don't bid against yourself, because he's not going to leave UT.
Right.
And where is he going to go? So just handle it well without getting overextended like too many ADs do.
Yeah, there's one job in the country that's for sure better than every other football job, and it's Alabama. And do you want to be the guy who follows Saban? Probably not.
No.
So, you know, like
it's not that much better than Texas.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
But as far as I know that here is the place, like it's Alabama. Like that's really the one, there's not many places that have 3 coaches that have won national titles. I mean, there's a couple, but era to era, like Alabama lifts over it, but that's the one. But yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, you're Texas. If you're a Texan, you're winning at Texas with the ridiculous money around you. You're not going to.
You would never see a Lincoln Riley move from Texas somewhere else like you saw from Oklahoma, and that's why it was so shocking when we saw that one, because that would never thought we'd see that at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, in that one, I think you could say, all right, maybe you just want to live in Southern California. There's some things you could point to, but yeah, not much different jobs. I guess just a hotter recruiting talent bed out there at USC. But yeah, for UT, I mean, in comparison to any job, I mean, they're right there neck and neck. And the only thing you may get edged out on is number of titles that you've already won or things like that. But Sark's set up really well. I'm picking them, I think, to win the whole thing, guys. I don't know about y'all. I mean, I'm still going to give it some more thought, but I think that they're going to beat Washington. And I think, as much as I just talked about the SEC, it's not a lack of respect for them or what they've accomplished, because I think I've made that clear every time we talk about them, that like they've earned it through their play and through winning multiple national titles with multiple teams. It's just that the bias, especially by the media, it's overkill. They don't need it. They don't need the benefit of the doubt at every turn. They don't need a bump. Sometimes it's okay to not be in the playoffs. Sometimes it's okay to not be the greatest thing all the time. And that drives me mad, of just that sort of attitude. But I will say that they back it up. Their teams do, multiple teams do, and it's not just a one-trick pony. And for all the hand-wringing over Florida State and all that, Alabama could very well go win the national title. And then what are we talking about? We're talking about the same exact thing where, the committee got it right, and see, look, Alabama was the best team and blah, blah, blah. And if they don't, then there's odds that Texas wins it, and they're a de facto SEC team at this point. So, I mean, it's just going to keep coming up roses for that conference. And they'll have, a couple cracks where you could look at it that way, of either a team that's already here or a team that's about to be here and will enter as national champions. Yeah. Although Washington and Michigan will have something to say about that. But, yeah, they're set up really well to see the rich get richer with Oklahoma and Texas rolling in the way that they're going to be rolling in.
I think all 3 teams are bad matchups for Michigan, because Michigan has seen Kyle McCord's the best quarterback they've seen all year, right? So
probably.
Yeah. Kyle McCord and Drew Aller are the only ones that would, and Drew Aller didn't have a good game against them, and Kyle McCord played okay. He was maybe the difference between, a closer, it's still a touchdown game, so it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, they have not seen a Penix, they have not seen a Ewers, and they have not seen Jalen Milroe, especially.
They did play Heinrich Harburg.
This has been 365.
But no, Jalen Milroe in his current form too is really scary, because aggressive defenses are going to get burned by him. You know, when I was talking to my friends about like, hey, if, you know, the theoreticals when you go through it, like, what if Jordan was there, like, and Alabama was in? Like, I wouldn't want to play Alabama. Florida State's defense is great, but they're aggressive, and where Jalen Milroe gets you, and you saw it with Georgia yesterday, is even though they kind of contained his rushing for the most part, is that there are times where they've got, you know, Bond and Burton just running down the field and everything's covered, and so he just squirts out and gets, you know, 19 yards, and he's not even breathing hard.
Yep.
Like he's just that kind of an athlete. So it's impressive.
Jordan Travis, I'll go back to that game with LSU and that shootout that I thought at the time he was the Heisman Trophy leader because of how that game ended, and he was fantastic. I hated for him. I thought his statement yesterday was great. He didn't insult anybody. He put his feelings out there, and I'm proud that he did. I really like the way that young man plays. Speaking of which, the Heisman, they will be announcing here, I haven't even been monitoring, soon who the finalists, who will be a part of those who go to New York City for the Heisman Trophy announcement coming up on Saturday. When we come back, Paul Catalina and his top 5.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 CFP excuses. This is what the committee has done. Let's go through some history here, guys. Craig loves these.
What, the top 5?
No, the CFP excuses.
Yeah, okay.
Like a lot of this was when I was going through this, I was hearing Craig's voice in my head talking about it.
Okay.
Number 5, travel time. That was one of the ones that they gave for assessing people. These guys were on planes more. So, and that, like, everybody flies differently, you know? Like, I mean, so, you know, I know people have huge anxiety of flying, and then, you know, it's about, what, an 85-minute flight from Dallas to Kansas City?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That long, yeah.
Yeah. It's an 8-hour flight from Dallas to Honolulu, and I've been on both those flights multiple times, and I've seen people have the same anxiety on the same flight, and that 85-minute flight feels like an 8-hour flight to them. So again, I don't know, but this was one of the ones, and this was like the deep, like a deep
body
cut.
Clocks.
Yeah, body clocks.
That was the big buzz phrase, was body clocks, and the travel, like different time zones, and that load of BS from Jeff Long. God, that was the worst there at the beginning of the playoff. They were game control.
Whoa.
Oh, I know, I'm just saying, though, but like, these were all these things that they were rattling off as, again, reasons to just justify what they had already decided just because they wanted to. And then, oh, well, no, what do we have to explain why we did this? Oh, travel time and body clocks and all this made-up BS. I will say, though, in terms of travel, Texas got the best draw out of everybody in the college football playoff and a huge advantage. Washington has to go all the way to New Orleans. Texas just has to hop on over from Austin. It's not a nothing flight, but it's nothing compared to Washington having to go there. And then the national title games in Houston?
Yeah.
So that sets up pretty well for UT as far as the travel time thing goes. But, yeah, that's a weird argument amongst many other weird ones.
Number 4. Game control.
Yeah.
Game control was, okay, how do you determine who is better when their records are exactly the same? Well, not only how much you blew somebody out, like, because sometimes you can blow somebody out and those, 2 touchdowns that, turn into 4 touchdowns. They were 2 freak plays at the end of the game. So it was really a closer game until the last 5 minutes when there was a fumble and a pick 6 and the other team scored a couple touchdowns and put it away. No, it was really, throughout the first quarter and the third quarter, this game, like, it was a completely arbitrary and non-measurable metric of game control.
What was Alabama's game control for the Auburn game? That just doesn't get brought up as
31 seconds.
Yeah. They controlled the last 32 yards of that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if Hugh Freeze and Ron Roberts knew how to run a defense there in those final seconds, then that renders everything that we're talking about today moot or entirely different, right? I mean, that one outcome, that kept FSU out of the playoff.
Yeah.
That one outcome and changed everything. But yeah, this was all the game control, the body clocks. That was all a Jeff Long thing right at the very beginning, and it was so bogus and it was so subjective. And that circles back to what I was talking about earlier as far as just this is the dumbest way to decide a champion, the dumbest in all of American sports, the worst postseason for determining a champion. And I guess the word I was looking for is it's just so subjective. And there's no way to line everybody up in a March Madness style tournament, but why are we allowing subjectivity to rule over on-field results most of the time? You know what I mean? I just find that to be so silly and subjective. And the people who are the ones making those decisions, that's just But game control, that was a Jeff Long special, and that was ridiculous.
Number 3. And this one was somewhat valid, but also used because they needed an excuse. The 13th data point. This is what kept TCU and Baylor out of the 2014 playoff because the Big 12 did not have a title game. And all the other Power 5 conferences did. And Bob Bowlesby gift-wrapped the excuse to the committee so that they didn't have to take any Tums that day. But when it was described to us as the fan and the viewer, it wasn't, hey, their commissioner refuses to name a champion and is trying to leave it nebulous so that maybe we take 2 of his teams and leave somebody else out. We're going to call it a 13th data point that they didn't play the last week and everybody else did. So now those teams are in. Now, where the 13th data point becomes bogus is that sometimes teams don't get the 13th data point because they lost one game to a really good team on their side of the conference, and then they still make the playoff. I see that and raise you the SEC and TCU last year. Georgia and TCU both, Georgia did, but TCU did not win the conference. They were out. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, just a thing to use when you needed to use it. I mean, that's all that was. That only mattered when they needed something to differentiate and get Baylor and TCU out of the conversation. So all of a sudden, 13th data point mattered, just like when they needed to excuse why this team was over that team. All of a sudden, body clocks mattered. Again, it's all subjective, and it's all just whatever they need to get through the television show that's a sham and just, put some type of reasoning out there for their entirely subjective decision-making.
All right, we'll have the Heisman finalist in a minute, but we go down, continue with the top 5.
Yeah,
Paul?
Garrett, I'm sending you a picture that you can throw up there here in a second. Number 2, best over most deserving. Look, this was the argument, and Bill Hancock threw this out. It's usually been the most deserving, and no sport really guarantees that the best teams are going to be in it. The Patriots were 18-0 and played a very scrappy Giants team that had to win a Super Bowl like this with Eli Manning almost getting sacked. Like, that's how they had to do it. Were the Giants the best team? No. If they played that game 10 times, the Giants probably lose 9 of them. The Patriots are that good. But that's why you do it and you earn your way in. The Giants, the Giants were better than the Cowboys that year for the long short, but they beat them in the playoffs because they were given an opportunity to coach it up and figure it out and play it, and they did. And then if it is about the best teams, then you don't need any of the other stuff.
Florida Atlantic or San Diego State get in the college football playoff? So.
Yeah, I mean, the same rules. So, no, the best over most deserving, like if we're looking for the 4 best teams, then why should the games matter then? And when do they stop mattering if you're looking for the best team?
Okay.
Like, that's it. Like, when does that point happen?
Because
this year they decided it was best eye test and not most deserving. Other years it's most deserving. Again, they just came to the conclusion they wanted to come to, and they justified it the way that they felt they needed to, and then they moved on, and they don't give a damn about any of the fans out there, man. They got what they wanted. They got the TV product they wanted. And you know what? Alabama, it's nothing against them. It's not their fault. They did their job. They won the SEC. They beat Georgia, which everybody's just kind of like moving past already. Like this juggernaut that was in line 2-3 games away from winning 3 straight national titles, and we're just like, oh, they got beat, but oh wait, yeah. I mean, that's the playoff has completely clouded that result. But I mean, it's just this year it was the best, and it was the eye test. Again, a very subjective thing by a bunch of people just sitting in a room, but they're all watching the game, so we should just trust their opinions on this. Yeah. No ulterior motives whatsoever.
Yeah. And number 1, your QB is out. All right, there's 21 other players, and I get it. Like, look, the team is different. but they found ways to win both times. And yes, it is harder, the degree of difficulty, if Florida State had to play Michigan as opposed to Louisville, who's pretty darn good all year long, or any of those other teams, is going to be raised. But if you're going to give figure skating style judging, because that's what they're doing here, if you're going to do that, then raise the degree of difficulty and put Florida State in, because look, it's going to be tougher to beat Michigan, but if you give them a month to figure it out, hell, maybe they might do it. Maybe they might do it.
Well,
but we'll never know.
We'll never know. Thank you, Paul. Are you better?
I'm never going to be better.
Okay.
I won't get over this as long as I live.
My favorite team in 2001 had not been added to the national championship after getting smoked by Colorado so they could play the greatest, perhaps, team of all time, Miami, and it was like that. All right. The 4 Heisman finalists, not in any particular order other than alphabetically. LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels, Ohio State receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., Bo Nix, Oregon quarterback, and Michael Penix Jr., the quarterback at Washington. Not surprised by that 4 at all.
No. Although, I mean, if you want to put a 5th in there, I would put Jordan Travis, since apparently he's good enough to affect the entire national championship picture.
No, he can't win the Heisman. He's hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder who and when has there been a Heisman Trophy winner, and maybe just right there on my that was like hurt and missed a game or two at the end of the year.
Yeah,
like near when because there's a lot of votes that were cast even a week ago when it was opened up. Yeah. I cast mine yesterday afternoon. I don't remember exactly the time, but I did.
Yeah.
All right. By the way, Paxton, I asked a couple of friends of mine if they had a Heisman Trophy vote who covered Texas. If extended 1 through, let's say, whatever number, where would they put T'Vondre Sweat on their ballot? And they have a ballot. And they said probably around 8, around number 8.
Also, Paxton, I don't agree with your FSU should boycott the bowl game. I think they should. I think they should try to convince all the guys that are going to opt out to stay, pay them a little extra money, and try to beat Georgia with all their might.
It would be the dumbest thing ever. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw somebody, I think it was a media person, making the argument that now, like, if Florida State was really deserving to go and beat Georgia, just never minding the fact that there could be several opt-outs and all of these different
transfer
types of
portal,
things. Yeah. On both sides.
Yeah.
On both sides. So, like, yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I can see, like, go beat Georgia and then claim the national title. But
it's the Georgia team that lost yesterday and the Florida State team that's playing, like, the likelihood of that being it. I can just tell you from Georgia's perspective, Brock Bowers, Amarius Mims, and Ladd McConkey probably aren't playing in the game under any circumstances.
Yeah.
So that's 3 studs that are not going to be there.
It's
And
great
it doesn't
to
matter
see.
because FSU's playing a backup quarterback anyway, so nothing matters.
Sergeant Pickles, it's been a while. He's a big Washington fan. Sorry I'm late. Will be darn fun rematch against the Longhorns. I expect a close one either way. Go Dogs.
I can't wait till he makes it to Lieutenant Pickles.
Yeah. Yeah.
If only not for Tommy Tuberville, he would be Lieutenant Pickles by now.
Yeah. That was a great win for the Huskies, though. That was, I mean, to beat Oregon twice and to do so. Oh, it's almost like why they play the games.
Because Oregon was a 9.5-point favorite in that game.
Why did we even play the game? Oregon should be in the CFP. They should be Pac-12 champion because a committee thought that they were better, or people out in Vegas thought that they were better. I mean, that's basically how you're saying that you want to decide things at this point when it comes to the championships. But, congratulations to the Huskies. They went out there. They left no doubts. They were the better team. And what a performance by Michael Penix. And, very excited to see that matchup with Washington and Texas. That's going to be awesome.
365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the local CW. Now brought to you and sponsored by GXG, the NIL collective for Baylor. Also, the one other college football note we never got to was Caleb Williams. Not a surprise. Will not play in the Holiday Bowl for USC, and they will go with Moss at quarterback. Whatever happened to Malachi Nelson on that depth chart?
I don't know off the top of my head.
They're probably trying to, I don't know. I don't know how much he's played this year. But
I bet they have a transfer starting quarterback next year.
He could be hurt. He could be any number of things. I have no idea. Yeah.
And then also, if you're a Big 12 basketball fan, I got to do this before we say goodbye. Arizona's 1 next year. Kansas 2. Houston 3. Baylor 6. Texas, BYU, and Oklahoma are all inside the top 20.
Yeah, what you also did not mention there, though, is that if you're looking around at Big 12 realignment rumors, Gonzaga's in there.
There they are.
UConn's in there.
Yeah, they are.
So I think you would actually be, if you took up all the rumors and who has been rumored to potentially join the Big 12 over the last year and a half, you would actually have, if all those things would have come to pass, I believe that would be 6 of the top 7 ranked teams in the country. Arizona, Kansas, Houston, UConn, Baylor, Gonzaga. Now, obviously, it didn't work out for 2 of those teams, or has not yet. But, 4 of the top 6, and then, if that had worked out, 6 of the top 7. But we'll see if that ever comes to pass.
UT just beat, UConn. They're number 5 in the women's poll. Colorado, 8. Remember, they beat LSU, and Baylor is at number 10. Utah, K-State, all in the top 15. Thank you, Emery Winter, Levi Caraway, Jack McKenzie. We tried to give you a lot, and we did, and hopefully we didn't just jam it so far down your throat that it didn't make sense. Thank you, Garrett Ross, for weaving through all of that with your magical ability there. Thanks to Paul Catalina.
I made it through all 2 shows, 4 hours of talking with no tears. No tears!
Someone said go by Balcones and pick up yourself another bottle on them. For Craig Smoak and I'm David Smoak, we're back at it again tomorrow. Thank you so much to our sponsors. Good night. This is 365 Sports.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas.